Wednesday, October 27th. Now that we have a quorum, I'd like to welcome all of you and the members of the public, and thank you all for coming today. And isn't it wonderful that we had rain and it's not raining right now? My name is Carol Quant. I'm the current chair of the Board of Community Services. I'd also like to introduce our hosts, Jackie and Elisa, and let you know that these two ladies will be coordinating the public comments and helping us during the meeting and taking notes for any follow-up needs we may have. At this time, the panelists and presenters should please silence your cell phones and keep your microphones muted if not speaking. Members of the public joining this meeting will have webcams off and microphones muted. If you're phoning in to join the meeting and you choose to speak during the public comment section of the agenda, for privacy reasons, the host will rename you to caller and only the last 4 digits of your cell phone number will show. Additionally, please know the City of Santa Rosa is committed to providing a safe and inclusive environment free from disruption and will not tolerate any hateful speech or actions. Everyone is expected to participate respectfully, or if necessary, the meeting will end immediately. And with that, may I have the host explain how public comments will be heard at today's meeting?
Thank you, Chair Quant. At each agenda item, the item will be presented. The chair will ask for board comments or questions, and then at the appropriate time, open the floor for public comments. The host will lower all hands until the public comments item is open. Once the chair has called for public comment, the chair will ask the public to raise their hands if they wish to speak on the specific agenda item. Those joining by phone may dial *9 to raise your hand. The host will then call on those who have raised their hands. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes, and a courtesy timer will appear on the screen. Email public comments received by the deadline have been distributed to the Board of Community Service members and uploaded to the agenda prior to the start of today's meeting. Emails received will not be read into the record.
And with that, I call this meeting, October 27, of the Board of Community Services to order at 4:09 in the afternoon. Pursuant to Government Code 54953E and the recommendation of the Public Health Officer of the County of Sonoma, this Board of Community Services meeting and its members will be participating in today's meeting via Zoom. Board members and staff are participating from remote locations or practicing appropriate social distancing if not in remote locations. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting as noted on the City of Santa Rosa's website and on the agenda. And with that, can we have a roll call?
Please respond when I call your name. Chair Quant.
Here.
Vice Chair Griffin. Vice Chair Griffin.
Here.
Thank you. Board Member Spillman.
Here.
Board Member Pitts.
Here.
Board Member Cruz.
Here.
Board Member Spence.
Here.
Let the record reflect that all the board members are present.
Great, thank you so much. At this point, I'd like to open the floor to public comments on non-agenda items. This is when people may address the Board of Community Services on matters not listed on this agenda, but that are the subject matter of this board. Do we have any public comments for item number 3?
There are no hands raised.
Great, thank you for checking. With that, we will move on to item number 4, which is the approval of minutes from our September meeting. Are there any edits or corrections needed for that? Raise your hand if you need to make any changes. Seeing no changes, we will consider them approved as submitted. Moving forward, upcoming events and reports on accomplished items. We'll turn this over to Jen Santos. Can we have a report on upcoming and accomplished events and possibly a few words on how Parks handled our brief bit of rain over the weekend?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Quant. I'm Jen Santos, Deputy Director for Parks. And I'll go over your upcoming and accomplished events, of which you received an attachment with the full list, but I wanted to highlight the upcoming event because our next meeting will be in December. So I really wanted to highlight the annual Handmade Holiday Crafts Fair. That's always really popular, and we're looking forward to that happening in some form this December 4th and 5th. And then excitedly, I'd like to tell you about our accomplished events surrounding Halloween. Of course, the Halloween at Howarth was fantastic, as usual, as expected. It rained, so staff switched to a drive-through mode for our Halloween at Howarth, which was really successful, and the families really enjoyed it. And of course, the floating pumpkin patch, both of those were sold out and really well attended. But we also wanted to say it's also a recognition of returning to activities where we are using masks and social distancing. So it's kind of a milestone for us to get back to events where people can actually attend in person, although we still are using COVID safeties, et cetera. And as far as the rain event, we did activate our emergency operations center at the city, and city staff from parks and facilities were out and about helping with putting up signage and checking out our parks where we have drainage issues. All of our parks did really, really well, but we usually have little areas where we put out signage to remind people that although it looks fun to play in the river at that point, we definitely need to stay away from it. We do have park maintenance staff on board if you'd like more details, as well as recreation staff, of course, on board if you'd like more details of any of that. But they handled it really well, but they've been working all weekend. So they've been really, really busy dealing with that. But we were ready for it and prepared, and we activated our EOC, our Emergency Operations Center. And that concludes the accomplished events and upcoming events.
Great. Any questions on either the park maintenance during the rain or anything that Jen discussed? We do have somebody here from the maintenance side. Seeing no hands, we will move forward to director updates.
Thanks again, Chair Quant. And just have a few updates today. Just wanting to, first of all and foremost, announce that our beloved admin secretary, Mary Lou Nichols, is retiring from the city. I know you all received an update from staff, but we also wanted to announce it here and thank her live, even though she can't be here due to a family emergency. She has retired, and we are really going to sorely miss her, but we are in great hands. You'll be seeing Shelley McClure is our new recording secretary for the Board of Community Services, and she is assisting the team behind the scenes today and observing, and she'll be on board in December to help us. So we're really going to miss Mary Lou, and we wish her the absolute best. I'm very happy for her. And we are in good hands here, and we're set to start in December with Shelley. And of course, Jackie is your host tonight, as well as Elisa backing up. They're always, all the three of them are always going to be helping out in some way. We also wanted to, just a few little announcements that if you're downtown at City Hall, the Santa Rosa Veterans Memorial Committee replanted some planters downtown at City Hall, right at the southwest corner. It looks great. So if you're out and about there, they've done a good job, and they are funding the ongoing maintenance there for that corner to be updated. And we also, just to let you know something behind the scenes, we've been working on an internal system to help get work orders for maintenance out to citywide staff. So that's not just park maintenance, that's also everybody else providing some sort of reaction and to a request at the city when we receive something from the community or something internally. It's called CityWorks, and some of us have been working in a program that sometimes worked for creating work orders, other of us not so much. This, we hope to have a nice cohesive way of sending out staff and tracking the work we're doing, because some of the things that are really frustrating for us is we know how much work we're doing, but we don't have a lot of data to back up how much work is happening, where it's happening, where we're seeing problem and repeat maintenance. So this is a system that will help us track that. And we're going to get started working with that. It's a long process, but it's going to hopefully roll out this year, if not soon, early into next year. And we'll have more updates for you, but it's exciting for us. So we wanted to share that with you. And then also a reminder that we're going to skip our November meeting because it always falls on the Thanksgiving holiday or very close to it. And we'll have our next meeting in December. And then finally, just a little update as a reminder that staff here at the city are returning to work on Monday in person. And so it still means that folks, staff can work hybrid. They can work from home and at work with approval, but that generally you should see staff returning to work on Monday as usual. And we'll see how things go. We are still obviously doing face masks and social distancing, but it's pretty exciting. And we're looking forward to seeing all of our coworkers back here. And with that, that concludes director updates.
Thank you, Jen. Any feedback or queries for Jen on director updates?
Yeah, I just have one question with the return to the city of Santa Rosa. So does that mean public can come? Like say clients that come to my job and they need to go to the city, can I say, oh, they're open, you can go? Or do they still need to make an appointment or
Yeah,
email?
actually, that's a good question. And I'll have to follow up with you for other departments throughout the city as far as public hours. But generally, yes, you should be able to send folks citywide. There should be full coverage for most of those, but I can't speak for all departments. So we can follow up with some of the details as we start to hear them once we reopen in November.
Terry?
Thank you. Just a quick question, Jen, on CityWorks. Will that application have a public portal, or will the public continue to use My Santa Rosa to submit requests for maintenance or for other needs?
That is a good question, and I believe that you'll still be using some version of My Santa Rosa to do that. But I was going to say, let me turn to our park maintenance staff to see if they have any updates on that. But that's my understanding, is that you'll still be using My Santa Rosa to connect, although there might be some changes in how that operates.
Okay, good enough.
Okay.
We're going to move on to item 7.1, which is the presentation and discussion on pickleball at the Finley Tennis Courts. And Jen, back to you.
Thank you, Chair Quant. And I'm actually going to turn this over to Jeff to kind of kick off the meeting, but I did want to let you know that we have received a number of public emails for this. And as Jackie announced, although they won't be read aloud here, they are part of the record and they are referenceable on the website for the agenda and attached there if you'd like to read them all. But we did receive over 142, and we did a little internal. There was about 121 support for this proposal that you're going to hear from the pickleball group. And we'll leave it at that. And I'll turn it over to Jeff to get us to introduce the topic.
Thank you, Jen, and good afternoon, board. Jeff Tibbetts, Interim Deputy Director for Recreation. And our presentation today, I want to first start off by acknowledging that it's a little different than what we've historically done with our presentation. So I am introducing the group that'll be presenting. but wanted to acknowledge that where traditionally these reports are staff reports, this is actually the community group themselves presenting their proposal to the board with the goal from staff to be able to get some discussion around it and some feedback from the board on the proposal that'll be given. So a little background with the group. It's a group representing Santa Rosa Pickleball. They have been formed for a while, been meeting with Recreation, trying to address some of the conflicts of pickleball use and court usage and seeing if there are things that we could do programming wise and scheduling wise out there. Ultimately, as the group met, we realized that really what it came down to is not an issue that can be solved with programming or scheduling. It really is an issue that's related to the limited court space and the increasing demand for pickleball activity. So the group continued to meet, and in their continued meetings, they formed a proposal that they sent into to Recreation, myself. And so I have reviewed it from a Recreation standpoint, pulled in Jen Santos on behalf of Park Planning, pulled in Jeremy Gundy on behalf of Park Maintenance, and we discussed the proposal that was submitted. All three areas agreed that the proposal does address a current problem with a fairly short-term solution to address the shortage of pickleball courts, and also that it was feasible from all three areas. So for Recreation, that includes an acknowledgement that the proposal today has to do with dual striping tennis courts to serve as pickleball courts as well. So for Recreation, working with the community and helping to manage the court usage and of when pickleball, when tennis, those types of things, and continue to monitor that with the community moving forward, which Recreation is comfortable saying that we're in a position to be able to work with. Jen Santos reviewing it in terms of park planning, but this really, it's a minimal project. It's not a capital improvement project, not a big funding source, those types of things. And then Jeremy Gundy on behalf of the park maintenance that would continue to review this as either an option if the direction was to proceed forward and we move forward with the proposal, that maintenance staff, either through overseeing a contract or through our own city staff, would be able to address the needs of the proposal. So with that said, I will go ahead and pass off to the group to present. And I believe I've got Linda starting, so I will pass off to Linda.
Hi, so actually we're going to be starting the presentation with Kathy Kirst. So if we can move it over to her, she will begin the presentation.
Kathy, you've been promoted to a panelist. If you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, thank you, Board of Community Services, for agreeing to this agenda item about pickleball. My name is Kathy Kirst, and I'm the volunteer pickleball ambassador for Sonoma, Solano, and Napa counties. I've played for 11 years in 6 states and all over California, enjoying tournaments and recreational play. I'll speak on 4 topics and then turn it over to the other speakers. Next slide, please. First, the committee. This past summer, Santa Rosa Recreation Parks asked that a pickleball committee of 5 be formed to work on court scheduling and court access issues. After several meetings, the committee asked Jen Santos of this board if we could present our goals at a meeting. Today, the 5 committee members will speak. As for me, see attachment A for my personal history in pickleball. Next slide, please. Secondly, what is pickleball? Pickleball is a paddle sport played with a wiffle ball on a court 1/4 the size of a tennis court. It is said to be a combination of tennis, ping pong, racquetball, and volleyball. The typical game is usually played as doubles, lasts about 20 minutes, and goes to 11 points. The game was developed on Bainbridge Island, Washington in 1965 at a family party. Next slide, please. And next, I'll tell you the history of Sonoma County pickleball. It all began in 2011 when the town of Windsor striped 2 of their 4 tennis courts at Hiram Lewis Park for pickleball. A few months later, the city of Santa Rosa agreed to stripe 2 tennis courts for pickleball at Finley in exchange for volunteers running introductory clinics for 2 months. The city also requested beginners be welcomed and taught. In June of 2012, the Wine Country Games held their first pickleball tournament in Windsor. And in years thereafter, the annual tournament was held at Findlay, drawing over 300 players from California and other states. In September 2013, the city of Santa Rosa agreed to convert Findlay Tennis Court number 3 to 4 dedicated courts if the players could raise $11,000 to pay for it. Ha! The donation drive began and the money was raised within 4 weeks and courts were ready for play in November. In 2015, the city surprised us by converting a Howarth Park tennis court to 4 dedicated pickleball courts. And then in July of 2017, the city lined 2 temporary courts at Findlay for use by pickleball and tennis players. Numbers of players ever since have certainly exploded. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And finally, pickleball is inclusive. Pickleball represents players of all races, ages, and socioeconomic status. During Findlay beginner sessions recently, with a player having developmental and intellectual disabilities, we teachers felt joy seeing the player eventually learn and feel success. Also, a local player and retired teacher, Nancy Carton, annually collects donations for the Salvation Army. And another local player, Marty Cassidy, a teacher at a Title I school, teaches pickleball. He enjoys seeing the growth of self-esteem and bonding through this recreation. Indeed, pickleball is a sport for all people. And now I turn it over to our second committee member, Pat Crabtree.
Thank you, Kathy. Could I have the next slide, please? I'm Pat Crabtree, and I've also been playing pickleball for 11 years and have been playing and advocating for the sport ever since I started. I'm going to talk to you about the growth of the sport nationally, as well as locally, and the health benefits of the sport and our goals here today. Please reference the 2 articles in your packets, one from the Sports and Fitness Association called the SFIA, and the second from The Economist. In 2015, 2 million people were reported to be playing pickleball nationally. 5 years later, in 2020, that number grew 110% to 4.2 million. Just from the time period from 2019 to 2020, reporting shows the number of players increased nationwide by 21.3%. Now, keep in mind that in 2013, Santa Rosa had the wherewithal and the vision to put in 4 dedicated pickleball courts at Findlay when we had 70 players playing here locally. 2 years later, in 2015, after seeing the benefits of pickleball in the community and the growth, the city added a second pickleball venue at Howarth, putting in another 4 dedicated courts. Well, since 2015, the number of pickleball players locally and nationally has grown tremendously. We now have about 700 plus players playing here locally, but the pickleball facilities in Santa Rosa have not grown. The Findlay courts are now greatly impacted with 40 or more players waiting to get court time on a daily basis. The Economist wrote an article in February of this year stating that pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the US, stating the same tremendous growth rate as the SFIA report. The article went on to report that in March, when the quarantines went into effect and courts were locked down, portable pickleball nets sold out across the United States. What does this say about the future growth of pickleball? 4.2 million pickleball players represents 1.38% of the US population of people over 6 years of age. Of that number, 1.4 million are core players, which represents 0.33% of that population. This demonstrates the tremendous potential growth of the sport going forward. Santa Rosa was the first in the county to build dedicated pickleball courts. The statistics clearly show that the city needs to provide additional pickleball facilities to keep up with the heavy demand. The courts are so impacted that we are not able to take the sport and the community to the next level, which would be to hold round robins ladders, leagues, all levels of skill building, inter-community play, and tournaments. To do this, we need additional courts. The monetary benefit to the city would also be increased due to the increased traffic in hotels, shopping, and restaurant business. It's a win-win situation. Next slide, please. I want to speak about the health benefits. It's pretty obvious any kind of sport is good for your health, but pickleball is really a part of a healthy lifestyle. It's a multi-generational sport played by all ages from 6 to 90. Pickleball helps not only keep our bodies fit, but also our minds. It can be therapy for many individuals and needs to be part of any community sports and fitness program. Middle schools, high schools, and colleges are now implementing pickleball programs. I've personally spoken with retired PE teachers who tell me they wish they had known about pickleball when they were teaching. And I really have to ask, what are the boys and girls going to do after school when they want to go play some pickleball and they don't have facilities to go play it at? Next slide, please. So our goal here today is we are recommending to this board a fast, inexpensive, short-term solution to help release some of the stress on the highly impacted pickleball court venues in the city of Santa Rosa. To make clear, the cross-line striping of the 6 additional pickleball courts on the 2 west tennis courts at Finley would not impact the full functionality of the tennis courts. The temporary pickleball nets would be moved over only when tennis play was not occurring. I want to thank you for your time and consideration. I now turn this over to Linda Hoffman.
Hello, can you please go to the next slide? Thank you, Pat. So I'm Linda Hoffman. I'm actually here at the Finley Courts now. And I am thinking back to when I just started. So I had to do a search in my Amazon account to actually figure out when I started playing. And it turns out that in July 2019, I bought my first pickleball paddle. It took me about 2 weeks to work up the nerve to actually go out and play. But after I played my first game, I was obsessed. In my part of this presentation, I want to talk about the faces of pickleball. You see that pickleball is not so much a sport as it is a community. The special community is multi-generational, racially diverse, and all-inclusive. As someone once told me, if you can walk, then you can certainly play pickleball. To help you see and hear a few of the passionate local players and understand the impact that pickleball has had on their lives, we asked Rob Olmsted, a local player, to compile a set of current video clips. While you watch this video, I would like you to think, what would these people be doing if they weren't playing pickleball? I can tell you that most of them would be non-active at home, many of them by themselves. Here's the video now. And presenter, if you want to click on that, I will mute myself. Presenter, you would click on the link on
Yes,
the PowerPoint
I'm
presentation.
getting it now. Give us just a moment.
All right, thank you.
It's outdoors and there's lots of people to play with. We are so lucky in Sonoma County to have such a wonderful group of people that play pickleball. It's really changed the whole environment of exercise because people of all ages can play, and it's a united type of sport where you get to know people and have a wonderful time and interact. It's a great sport and it's not very technically difficult.
It's a great sport I can pick up. I love being outside, getting some exercise.
I love meeting new people my age.
I'm 23.
26.
I would say it's taken over my life maybe a little bit. It's definitely addicting, but it's a good community and it's a great way for a lot of age groups to get out and play a sport.
But it did change my life too. going through a big weight loss journey and getting into shape, and it's just a big motivator for that. So yeah, absolutely.
It's been a treat for me to get to play with my son.
You just meet all sorts of people. They're super friendly, and it gets me moving.
I started with pickleball because a friend wanted to organize a fundraiser for Council on Aging. She called out. It was so much fun. More fun than the tennis that I used to play. The people are very social, very friendly. And for newbies, they can pick this up very quick and have a lot of fun.
I'm 20. It's gonna be 21 in 2 months.
How long have you been playing pickleball?
Like almost a year.
And why do you play pickleball?
Because I love it. The community is great, and it's vibey. I don't know. It's good vibes.
So I've been playing kind of consistently for about 6 months.
Okay.
And but I'm a long time tennis player. So
We're new to the area, so I've met people, and it's been like a social function for me as well.
And friends thought I might like it, and I tried it, and quickly became addicted. It's fabulous. It's wonderful.
8 years ago, we started here at Finley, and now the whole sport is just blowing up. We need a lot more courts. People love this game, and there's many different levels of play. So I play tournaments, and we like to have a couple courts with, tournament preparation. But you need a lot of courts for all the different levels because many people are playing.
I'm a recreational player, and we love playing out here. It's a terrific crowd. It's socialization and healthy exercise. And we could use a few more courts. The more courts we have, the more people will come out, and the more people will come to Santa Rosa.
It got me through COVID, kept me sane, and it's just probably the most fun way to get a workout in.
Well, I just came driving by one day and started watching, and Kathy invited me to play, so I came over and started playing.
Changed my life. I absolutely love pickleball. It is my community, and I've met a lot of friends through pickleball, and I think new people should try it. It's an easy game to learn, but it's a hard game to master.
I gotta say that it's the most fun sport that's out there today. I played basketball till I was 38. I played tennis for 25 years. I golfed for 6 or 7 years. And when I found pickleball, I never went back to any of those things again.
Anybody can play at any level. It doesn't matter what sex, what age. It's a lot of fun, and I play almost every day.
It's an all-encompassing sport. It's great exercise. There's camaraderie. There's people that you could always play with when you step on a court. It's just a wonderful game, and I'm going to play it until I die.
The beautiful thing about pickleball is that multiple people are using the facility. Rather than 2 or 4 people reserving a court and using that court, and those are the only people on the court, you can have 4 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court, and the group comes together and everybody plays, no matter how many people there are.
I actually started about 4 to 5 months ago, and you know what I love about it is it's a fun game. Most people can pick it up fairly quickly, and the people out here are fabulous. So nice. So welcoming, happy to help you, and so it's a great environment, wonderful for the community. We need more pickleball courts.
Lately it's been very, very, very crowded, to the point where we're waiting 20 minutes, 30 minutes just to find some court time.
Well, we have the perfect weather around here for pickleball. It's so nice to play. You can play in the mornings, in the evenings, in the midday like this. It's wonderful. We need more facilities because we're growing so fast, fastest growing sport in the nation right now. So everybody almost that I talk to is picking up pickleball, and we're looking for places to play.
All right, can we go back to the presentation? Great, thank you. So as you can see, players come from all walks of life and have many different reasons for playing. One thing they all hold in common is that they are obsessed with pickleball. In every pickleball community, you will notice that the majority of players are recreational. That means they enjoy hanging out on the courts, talking with other players, getting some fresh air and exercise, and being a bit competitive. This makes up the majority of the local community. But in addition to the recreational players, we have the competitive group. This often includes a larger number of younger players in their 20s and 30s, and all the way even to those in their 70s, as you will see by our next speaker. One of our youngest players is a two-time national champion, first when he was aged 14. His father, a three-time national champion, now plays at the senior pro level. Santa Rosa boasts several other competitive players at all age levels who regularly medal in tournaments all over the country. These competitive players are looking for play at their level and opportunities for lengthy drill sessions and tournament prep. Our local lack of courts has cut out opportunities for this group, which now causes our highest level players to have to travel over an hour away to the East Bay for court access. Next slide, please. If you head over to Howarth Park on any given afternoon or evening, you'll notice families and friends playing together. I recently saw a group of teen boys engaged in what I might call wild pickleball, getting very physical and being very vocal with raucous laughter in between. This group of players is also very impacted by the lack of availability. And finally, I would like to address a growing group of players. I am a principal at a local K-12 school, and I'm currently involved in getting middle school level pickleball as a league sport. Kids pick up pickleball at an amazing speed, and often those who feel uneasy about trying the more regular sports find pickleball very easy to be successful in a short time. Where will these school players play? Next slide, please. So I hope I've been able to adequately convey a collage of who it is that plays pickleball. So I'm over here now at the Findlay Pickleball Courts, and a few minutes ago, we had over 100 players gathered together in support of this presentation and proposal. These are our taxpayers, our workers, our volunteers, and our local citizens. And our plea to you is to please allow us to add some additional court space at a very low cost with very little impact, allowing a more comprehensive use of currently available recreational facilities. And now up, we have Joanne Cohn. She's actually sitting here next to me, so you won't need to change over to her computer. I lovingly call her Santa Rosa's pickleball mayor. She plays more hours on the local courts here than any other local pickleball player that I know. And here's Joanne. Sorry, hold on one second. There we go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joanne, and just like the rest of our group, I love pickleball. I love pickleball because I get lots of exercise. I'm out in the sunshine, and it's a very social game. I've made lots of friends. I've lost a couple of COVID pounds, and I've managed to stay relatively sane during the last couple of years. But I'm not alone. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of others right here in Sonoma County who are saying the same thing. And that's why we are here today. Next slide, please. Let me give you an idea of why we need more pickleball courts at Findlay. On almost any morning of the week, especially Monday through Friday, there are lots and lots of people who want to play pickleball. In fact, when I go there, we have so many people waiting for courts that we have to have a sign-up board. So as soon as one group of 4 goes off the court, another group of 4 goes on. And as we wait for pickleball courts to open, we notice that almost all of the time there are no tennis players on the courts. We need more pickleball courts in sunny Santa Rosa. And specifically, we are here to ask your help in getting the 2 west tennis courts at Finley striped with pickleball lines so that both tennis and pickleball can be played. By the way, 2 tennis courts can be converted into 6 pickleball courts, which is awesome because that enables more people to use the courts at any one time. And just in case you were wondering, we aren't asking for more courts at Howarth or Galvin in this presentation because we realize that long-term repairs are needed to the court pads in the tune of $300,000 or more each. Next slide, please. We knew that casual observation would not be good enough for this presentation. So we decided to count the number of people playing on the tennis and pickleball courts for a week. In this way, we could have solid data to back up our observations. On this slide and the next, we have a table for the week of July 25th through 31st of the number of people playing pickleball and the number of people playing tennis each day from 8:45 to noon. As you can see on the pickleball attendance slide, there are regularly 30 or more players at the courts. And ever since July, we are now regularly seeing 40 plus players on most days. Next slide. And now on to tennis court attendance. You will notice a lot of zeros. During Monday through Friday, there are just a few times when 1 or 2 players show up. The weekend mornings are busy with 8 to 12 regular players. We are not seeking play on the temporary courts during this time, only when players are not present. Next slide, please. We are asking the city to cross-line 6 temporary pickleball courts on Finley's 2 west tennis courts. They're marked Court 1 and Court 2 on the diagram. This means that these courts can be used for both tennis and pickleball. This is a key point. We are not taking away any tennis courts. We are just adding pickleball lines. High quality, safe pickleball nets would be rolled over to the courts only during times when no tennis players are playing. This proposal will create extremely needed pickleball court accessibility for waiting pickleball players. And we will encourage the city of Santa Rosa to post a sign stating tennis first for those 2 courts. Next slide, please. How much will this project cost? As you can see by this slide, current paint cost with labor runs around $650 per court, as provided by a local striping company, Adams Surfacing, used before at Finley. The mobile cabled minimal footprint nets run about $1,500 each, of which Sonoma County Pickleball is prepared to assist with this cost if necessary. The overall cost for this efficient and short-term solutions runs under $15,000 to allow up to 24 additional pickleball players to be on the current empty courts. In full disclosure, I'd like to add that I don't think this is a perfect solution. As a pickleball player, I would love to see the courts just painted and used exclusively for pickleball 7 days a week. I know it's much more fun and easier to play pickleball on courts lined just for pickleball. But I also know that there are some tennis players who want to be able to play tennis, especially on the weekends at Finley. And they don't like the idea of playing on tennis courts that are cross-lined with pickleball courts. So instead of a perfect solution, we are proposing a compromise, which overall gets more people on multi-use courts, be they pickleball players or tennis players. Next slide, please. So on behalf of our pickleball subcommittee, I'd really like to thank each of you for your time this afternoon. Our fellow pickleball players have all been asking us, how do we go about getting more courts in Santa Rosa? And we've been able to say, we're on the agenda for the Board of Community Services meeting in October, and this is our big opportunity. So thank you for this opportunity. We all appreciate it. And just as importantly, join us for a game of pickleball. Actually, Mayor Chris Rogers has already come out and played twice, and he's currently setting up a third time to come out again. Now it's your turn. We'd be glad to set up a specific time for y'all to come out and play, or just come out any morning and you'll find a whole group ready to welcome you. We have paddles and balls. Just let us know what works best for you. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. We're now going to open this up for questions to both staff, that would be Jeff Tibbetts, and also to the pickleball representatives. I assume the pickleball representatives can still come online, and if someone references to a slide in the presentation, it could also come back up. So a simple visual raise of hands, a logo raise of hands, whatever you want to do, and I'll call you by name. Terry.
Thank you. I have several questions, so I'll try to get through them as quickly as I can. Just for clarification, I wasn't clear whether tennis, I believe it's tennis court number 4, is still being used for tennis or whether it's exclusively being used for pickleball. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, I can address that question. So it is still available as dual striped and still available for tennis and pickleball. What happened during COVID, when we first brought things back, is we didn't want to be moving the nets back and forth. Everyone was still trying to figure out what was safe and how to operate. So it was set up during COVID to be for pickleball use only, to leave the net out there. And it's kind of stayed that way right now. But we do have the ability to adjust that back in the future.
Okay, thank you. Did the subcommittee reach out to the tennis community, and how did those conversations go?
So we did talk with the tennis players on the weekend. They are concerned about the lines on the courts. So we did discuss that with them. Over at Sunrise Park, over in Rohnert Park, we do have a very similar situation where we have 6 courts cross-lined, and we have not had any issues or complaints from the tennis players over at Rohnert Park where they actually are using courts with these lines. So, you know, to be fair, the tennis players are concerned about the lines on the courts. We did communicate to them the tennis first policy, most definitely on courts 1 and 2, and we intend to completely stand behind that. So if tennis players are present, we would not be putting up any of the nets for the pickleball courts.
Thank you for that. So I did actually go over to Sunrise Park and look at that striping because, you know, as you know, Santa Rosa just has 2 courts on 1 tennis court, and I wanted to see the 6 court configuration. And one thing I noticed, it was very nicely done, I thought, but they have adequate room between the 2 courts so that there's no overlap in the 2 center pickleball courts. And then the outer 2 or outer 4 pickleball courts, it looks like they are as far to the left and right as possible. So that it looked like there was minimal striping interfering with the tennis courts. I'm assuming that in our case, the 2 courts in the west courts are too close together to fully have pickleball courts in between without some overlap. Is that correct?
So the pad runs about 92 feet wide. I'm actually sitting right outside of it now. It's 92 feet wide and about 120 long. So when we configured it, pickleball courts are 20 feet wide. So we would be looking at 60 feet within a 91 or 92 foot section. I do believe if you look at the diagram that we had on the slide, it looks to me like we could align the left and right sides of the outside courts. So there would be minimal interference with the outside lines of the tennis courts. And you're correct, as you saw at Sunrise, we would have two courts that would kind of straddle the middle section of where the two tennis nets kind of come up together.
Okay. And I know ideally you would like 6 additional courts. Did you consider a configuration of 4 similar to the 2 courts that are existing in court 4 to minimize that striping?
We have not considered that, no. Our biggest dilemma is 45 or plus, pickleball players standing on the courts in the morning when they are generally 0 tennis players. And so with a long-term project of getting permanent courts, pretty far in the future, and with pickleball exploding as it does, or as it is right now, I think it's in our best interest, if at all possible, to put as many courts in as temporary courts as we can.
And one of the communications we received raised some safety issues, and I think the gentleman was referring to pickleball being played right next to tennis without any separation or fence. If the west courts are being used, or if one of the west courts is being used for tennis, would the other court still be used, or courts still be used for pickleball, or would you just let the west courts be used for tennis in recognition of those safety issues, or do you have any concerns about that?
At this point, if there were any tennis players on court 1 or 2, we would not put up any pickleball courts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Terry, real quick, I'll speak to that as well. The same concern with recreation use of how to manage those courts. And that's also going back to your previous question. One of the reasons that we wouldn't see it as efficient to only do one of those courts is because the fact that the 2 sports don't necessarily do well when they're right next to each other. So it wouldn't, you would you're still kind of in that say it's one or the other still. So even if you left one tennis court alone and only did them on one other tennis court, it would still kind of be a one or the other situation.
Okay. And my last question for now, are tennis courts available for members of the public at Santa Rosa high schools?
So I can speak to that one as well. I did reach out to some Santa Rosa City Schools personnel, waiting to get more details back. So basically I asked about Comstock Middle School. If the courts were currently closed, was that just COVID protocol, or is that something that's ongoing? And then if that is a school policy, or if that's a district-wide policy, so if we should have conversations with those other areas. As far as recreation is concerned, would love to continue those conversations and try to help facilitate, because we acknowledge that tennis space across the board, tennis and pickleball space across the board for our city, there's a lack of resources. So if we can utilize some of those resources for the public, we would love to help manage that. But ultimately, that is something that they could tell us, yes, it's open to the public today, and they could determine for some reason that they need to close it, or they decide to rent it out to a group or something. So ultimately, it's something that we do not have control over and could not predict what the status of that will be moving in the future, but certainly happy to do what we can within recreation from the city's perspective to help facilitate some of that collaboration and ability for the public in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Logan.
I'm sorry, one more thing I'll just say with that is also acknowledge that that's a conversation I intend to push forward regardless of the recommendation of today's meeting, because again, this is a situation that we know that there's a shortage across the board. So sorry for the interruption, Logan, but just wanted to add that in.
That's all right, Jeff. I'm going to you. So are you looking for us to do a vote of a recommendation to take to the city council? That's what you're asking from us today?
I'll go ahead and let Jen answer the specifics of that, because I roughly know, but she's much more experienced in the Board of Community Services.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not looking for a roll call vote. We're looking for enough feedback so that staff know whether we should be moving forward with this or not. So yeah, no roll call vote, but we do need enough feedback so we know what the board would like to do.
Okay.
I will add on to that a little bit that one of the areas when we evaluated it, again, with the accessibility or the feasibility of this being a short-term solution, one of the areas where the city had a tough time supporting it in terms of a short-term solution is a lot of the community outreach that we generally do for these types of projects. So utilizing this as a public forum to hold some of that and get some of those comments and then get your feedback.
Okay, great, thanks. I will say before I go to you, Jeff, I'll say thank you to the subcommittee for having the mayor out there. I know he enjoyed it a lot, and hello to my former colleague and friend Joanne. Thank you for putting that together with your usual energy. And Chris is also a tennis player though, so he hasn't picked a side. And I actually have been out to Findlay and played pickleball myself. So, but I want to ask some Findlay questions, but put that aside for a second, Jeff, and ask about Howarth and Galvin. So I know those are slated to get repaired. Can you just give us a short update on that, and then how many courts are at each park right now?
So yeah, I'll let Jen speak a little bit to that. So the difference with those projects is that those are capital improvement projects, much larger projects to address the infrastructure issues that are out there. So I don't know, Jen, if you want to comment on that, or I also know that that's actually not an agenda item, so I don't know how much we want to comment on that either today. But Jen, anything you want to add to that?
Right. And so if you've been out to Howarth Park, we have 4 pickleball courts and 5 tennis courts. There are 3 tennis courts in the middle. 2 tennis courts in the middle that have structural damage. And so we know we're going to be coming back in with a larger capital project in the next 2 years. It's not a solution right now, though. As part of that outreach, when we do come back for those capital projects, we'll be outreaching to the community about what sort of configuration they want to see there. Tennis only, a combination of pickleball, and we'll have that larger conversation that Jeff was talking about. But we know that's a ways off, and we know the pickleball group has needs right now. So. And
is pickleball used at all, or the Galvin courts used at all for pickleball right now?
Oh, no, yeah, they're not used. Yeah.
There's a small kind of experimental that's been using with, so there's court 10 was converted to the youth tennis courts. And so there is some pickleball usage out on those courts as well.
It's actually very
sure. Go ahead. I'd like to hear from the subcommittee. Yeah. What are your plans for Galvin, if you have any?
Yeah. So as far as pickleball use of those courts currently, it's minimal, mostly because there's so much damage to the courts right now. They're actually unsafe to be moving very quickly on at this point. We have talked with, actually Kathy Kirst and myself are on the Galvin kind of community project. So we're on a subcommittee with them. We have also asked if we might be able to cross line those junior tennis courts once the pad is repaired with 4 pickleball courts. They're very similar in size. There's some slight differences, but they're pretty close. And so far the tennis community at Galvin and those associated with the subcommittee are in favor of that. But everyone involved acknowledges that that's probably a 3-year project at this point due to the pad being in such a state of disrepair.
Okay, thank you, Alice, or sorry, Linda. So we have 2 long-term efforts, I guess, and that's what the short-term effort is needed at Findlay. Okay, and I think Terry had a lot of my questions, so good job, Terry. I feel like, though, we have a simple solution. Maybe it's too simple. We have 2 tennis courts. Can't we keep one as just tennis and turn the other one into pickleball? Is that too logical? Jeff, has that been looked at as an idea?
So again, it could be looked at as an idea. I'm trying to look at the cross striping. Again, one of the issues with it in terms of just efficiency and getting the most out of limited space is that the 2 courts are so close to each other that it would still be one or the other. So you wouldn't have tennis taking place and those pickleball courts being used, which is one of the complaints that we've heard about the dual striped on court 4 is that when it's pickleball, those courts are kind of used for pickleball because tennis wouldn't be interested in playing in those close proximity to pickleball.
I get that. Is there any way to fence it in some sort of not expensive way or temporary way, so those safety concerns are alleviated?
It'd have to be looked into a little bit further. I do know, the cross striping of the two courts. If you only did if you only did 2 total additional pickleball courts, but if you tried to put 4 on the one, it would probably be difficult to get 4 courts and then enough, because it goes a little wider than the tennis courts. So to be able to do that plus the fencing would probably put the fencing too close to the tennis court for safety reasons.
Okay. My recommendation, just personally, is to explore some options to present to the city council, or at least to be able to answer those questions. They might have similar questions. And I do have concerns about some of the public comments who said that they have a dedicated group of folks that use those tennis courts. So I am concerned if we completely get rid of a pure tennis court, and that some of the local residents won't have anywhere to go, which they clearly use it. I mean, not at the same level though. So yeah, those would be my thoughts. And thank you to everyone for the presentation. Thanks, Carol.
Thanks, Logan. Before we move forward, except for background information on the other tennis/pickleball courts, let's remember that we're dealing specifically with Finley. And point of clarification, does this go to city council for restriping, or is this a park matter? And this is the Park and Rec Department is the end of the line. And we will get to you, Steve, in just a second, okay?
Sure.
Yes, that's correct. It's a parks decision. However, as Jeff explained earlier, this is a point where staff could support whatever decision is made with restriping, if that's what the board would like us to move forward with. So it's not necessary. It does not need to go to council at this point. I know we're going to focus on Finley, but just one sidestep into the other courts. Those are larger projects. They will need to go to council, but the restriping of this would not need to go to council. So it's a decision here tonight to either to stripe or not, or to wait, or some version thereof, if that's helpful.
Thank you for that clarification, Jen. Steve?
Yes, starting with the big picture, it seems fairly clear that the demographics break down in like the 20 to 50 years olds who are similar to golfers, are looking for sports that are easier or can be played in not 3 to 4 hours, like pickleball and tennis. And the 50 to 70-year-old cohort, which I put myself into, are looking for ways to socialize and keep fit, like in pickleball and tennis. I mean, to personalize this, I think there's a lot of folks like me in this cohort who find it a little more challenging to get to the net, to get to the baseline. The lateral movement isn't quite there. But when I play pickleball, I certainly have a cardio workout. There's no question about that. And it seems like everyone's having a good time. In addition, the nationwide, statewide, countywide, even citywide trends are quite clear. And it seems like Santa Rosa needs to catch up a little bit on this. And that really means more pickleball courts. And it seems like the solutions suggested can accommodate that and maybe get ahead of the game a little bit without impacting the need for the tennis players to have their time on the courts. It seems like there's a reasonable, very cost-effective solution to the issue that we're talking about. And that solution actually has been presented so that we can accommodate both the tennis player and pickleball players. But one of the questions I have for the subcommittee is really more future looking. And that is, does the pickleball community have any plans to make Santa Rosa the epicenter for the Bay Area semi-annual and annual pickleball annual tournaments that can help put Santa Rosa in the leadership position of the sport?
Absolutely, right? We would love to be the epicenter of the North Bay
But
tournament.
do you have plans to do that?
So this is our first step. We're definitely looking for short-term access because the community is exploding. And immediately after this, yes, we are definitely planning on pursuing some sort of a location where we can have a pickleball community of multiple courts. Like a place to play. Yeah, would be wonderful.
And I think most everyone appreciates the sensitivity that you have apparently, your team has apparently given to the tennis players. Apparently there's been some miscommunications or, kind of missing each other in a little way. But what I'm gathering is that there is some good cooperation between pickleball players and tennis players. It's really not acrimonious, and that there is a solution that everyone can live with and that this board can support. And I thank you for that.
Madonna, Carolina, I don't want to put you on the spot, but questions?
I just, a couple things. It was said if you could walk, you can play pickleball. Do people in wheelchairs not play pickleball?
I think it would be great for Kathy Kirst to take that question. I know that she's actually looked into that. Kathy, are you available?
If not, I am Pat Crabtree.
No, I'm here. Can
Oh,
you hear
there we
me? Okay. Yes, indeed. I'm a member of a national USA Pickleball Ambassadors website, and several of the people over the past few months have been talking about the tournaments they've been having and the play they've been having with wheelchair participants. And sometimes these tournaments and just recreational play are just done with maybe one able person, who's not in a wheelchair would be able to play with someone who's in a wheelchair. So I investigated further and I found out from one of the women who is running this in another state, I believe it was North Carolina. She said that it's helpful that the community raise funds to get these sports wheelchairs for people who are wanting to participate in the sport, because you have to have a special kind of wheelchair. And so it is one of my goals that as time goes on, and especially, I'm 73, I think the last time I checked. And so it's one of my goals to indeed, I'm playing until I'm 90 or 100 years old. And if I have to use a sports wheelchair, I'll help many of my friends who are the same age to have this come to Santa Rosa.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for answering that. And on the slide, one of the slides, it said temporary court. So how long is temporary?
This is Pat Crabtree. If I could go back to Steve's question about do we have a plan? I'm also a member, and so is Kathy, of a nonprofit organization called the Sonoma County Pickleball Club. And we've been in existence for a couple of years now. And the long-term plan is, in fact, to find facilities and build a pickleball complex. So yes, there is a long-term plan that a group of us have.
Thank you. That was kind of falling into my next thing. We have Trioni, we have Place to Play. My daughter was a competitive soccer player, and I've never played pickleball or tennis, so I'm ignorant to what you guys do, but I thank you for the video and the enthusiasm. And I am an able-bodied person, so I do hope to come out and try to play it. So thank you very much.
Madonna,
Look
just
forward
to
to
add
having
on,
you out there.
just to add on to the temporary clarification of that is, I think it's really the answer is it's a matter of continuing to assess our facilities and the need in the community, because this is a fairly minor project of just striping, right? It's temporary in the sense that that's something that could probably be redone again in the future if needed, but would certainly require, if other facilities are developed, what happens with Howarth Park, what happens with a future complex, those types of things that would then put us in a situation where it would be deemed the best role to move back to remove that striping and repurpose those again as tennis only courts. Or so it's certainly a to be determined based off of what happens between now and the next 3 years, 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Jeff, and for your questions, Madonna. Carolina?
I first want to thank the committee for their wonderful presentation. It was really very good and very clear. And you totally sold me. It looks like it's temporary / certainly timely. And I, for one, would like to suggest that we follow through with it. It looks like such a good way of getting these additional courts without costing a lot of money, and everybody is going to be really happy with it, or certainly satisfied enough. And who knows, the tennis players may decide they want to become pickleball players. I mean, you could have a switch here. And Linda's laughing about that. So
We have a lot.
I'm laughing because we have so many tennis players that are now pickleball players.
Yeah.
That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, we do.
there you go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome. So I also want to thank you for your presentation, and I want to applaud you for the letter writing campaign. I tried to get through, it was over 100. It came in 2 batches to us. And so I had my eyes to my iPad for hours on end, which makes me think that you guys are not only a group of pickleball players, but you have email lists, you have probably Facebook groups that you are connected 6 ways for Sunday. And because you're connected 6 ways for Sunday, I'm wondering what efforts you have made to, and I don't know if it's the same 30 to 40 people coming multiple days a week. I have found if I hit my head against the same wall often enough, eventually I say it hurts when I do it, I stop doing that. Have you used your email and other connections to say, hey, if you come at noon with your group, the courts are going to be open? Or do they come 30 and 40 at a time because there is no communication, because they like to socialize whether they're on the court or not? You guys just seem really organized. Could you elaborate on what efforts you've made to alleviate the situation using that path?
Yeah, I'm going to pass this over to Joanne, so she'll talk to that.
Hi, everybody. You know, we don't organize to get people to Findlay in the morning. I must admit, a lot of people like playing in the morning, but I have groups that play in the afternoon. And it's not just my groups. Everybody who's smart says, hey, you guys, let's meet at Findlay at 1 o'clock. And the courts are busy, but not as busy. And we also meet in the evenings at Howarth. I mean, we're there. So here you can't even drill. So I like to play tournaments. I've gotten into it. And so I have to drill with just one other person so I can increase my skills. I could never do that at Findlay in the morning. So I get a group and we play and we drill in the afternoon. But the truth is, everybody's coming out to drill now in the afternoon. And then we go to Howarth because there's lights at night. So it's not that we're trying to get everybody here in the morning. In fact, we do try to spread it out, but there is a group that likes the morning better. But for us, some of us, we know that we can try to sneak in a game in the afternoon and the evening, but the evening courts are busy too. I was at Howarth, I'm going to say, I don't know if it was Thursday night or the last Thursday night when there wasn't rain. And I bet there were 20 people waiting there too. And that's without exaggerating, but I couldn't even drill with the person, Andy, who I was supposed to drill with, because you can't just use a court for 2 people. You have to use it for 4 people, you know, so you can get 4 on, 4 off. So it's not just that we all want to be here in the morning.
Thank you for your answer. I don't really know if you answered my question, which was for an organized group, have you tried to discourage people who come, if they come repeatedly, they know they're not going to get a court right away, but they come anyways for the social atmosphere, for the blind luck. Maybe they think somebody's not going to be there. This rolls into my next question, which is how long is a pickleball game match? How often do you turn over the teams? How many? There are 4 players in a game. So far, so good?
Yep.
How many times do you turn over each court in a course of, and I'm going to let you do the equation. You guys know this.
Yeah, so a game lasts between 10 and 15 minutes. And so we do have a 4 on, 4 off policy. So as soon as a game is complete, they're going to come off, and then those that are waiting are going to go on. Kathy Kirst has set up a whiteboard for those busy mornings so that people can actually sign up for a court together and be ready to hop on as soon as people come off. And so the turnover, if you're talking about an hour, you'd get maybe 4 to 5 games per hour on each court. And then just to go back to your question about why do so many people come in the morning, especially in the summertime, it's difficult to play when the temperatures go up. The temperature on the asphalt out here in the sun is about 10 to 15 degrees hotter than the surface, the air temperature. We've had several actually end up at the ER with heat issues when we've tried to play in the afternoons when it's hot. So that's one reason why a lot of players come out in the morning. It is also a social aspect. They like to see each other. It's an obsession aspect. Once people start playing pickleball, just like this woman next to me here, they're obsessed, and they basically say they just can't stay away. So they come even knowing that they may wait 20 to 25 minutes in between each game. So I hope that addresses your question about the mornings.
It does. Can you talk a little bit about the social? I know that it's both a social game, that they're socializing during the game, but there's also socializing while people are waiting their turns. Are they chomping at the bit? Are they doing other things? Do people schedule other activities pretty much on top of pickleball and they're watching their clock because they have to be across town in an hour?
So I would say that most people are scheduling their time to be at the pickleball courts. It's not unusual for people to stay 2 to 3 hours just so they can get some games in. And so what was your other question? I'm sorry.
What kind of socializing is done while they're waiting to be on the court? Does the social aspect take over? You describe your sport as being both a social network and a sport.
Yeah, so people are talking obviously when they're waiting to get on the court, but the court access is so impacted that as soon as the court opens up, people are jumping to get onto those courts. And so no, the social aspect would not ever take over. They wouldn't get so distracted when a court opens that they would leave it open. It's a commodity right now. And so when the court's open, people are running over to get onto the courts.
That was not what I was trying to imply, that you were being distracted. I see this as being a multifaceted activity and just trying to explore all of those facets in an impacted space.
Correct.
That was all. Okay. So those are my questions. I'm just going to come right out and say, like Logan, to have no dedicated tennis courts on the west side of town just doesn't sit well with me. The west side of town has fewer facilities across the board for recreation and parks than the east side of town. And to literally cut in half the number of dedicated tennis courts, to be polite, I'll just say it doesn't sit well with me. What I would love to do is find a solution where we tip our hats to the tennis players who live and or work on the west side of town to say, you are important. One court we're keeping one court for you. With that as a jumping off point, my thought was, could we do backboard walls so that tennis drills and or pickleball drills could be done by a number of people who are waiting to play a game, people who need to do drills, people who are learning. Could we reasonably priced do backboards? Are backboards used at other facilities for either training purposes or one-offs? I can remember as a kid, you're out there with your tennis ball up against the garage door because you could. Has that been considered at all? Is that something you as a community would like to explore along with the tennis community, potentially exploring that?
Kathy, would you like to address that?
Kathy, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, we have had the opportunity to meet with people and talk about whether or not we could have like a backboard installed, and that would be a wonderful way for people who are waiting to play, that they can, both tennis and pickleball can, in fact, then utilize time by doing that. In fact, I've even seen some of our pickleball players, if there's a space available, they'll be hitting the ball against the netting on the tennis courts while they're waiting to play pickleball. So if there would be some way for that to be orchestrated, that would be fabulous.
Thank you. Those were my questions. So we'll go back to the board for any follow-up questions or comments. Oh, Steve.
Yes, one quick question about the statistics that were provided reflecting the number of tennis players and pickleball players during a specific week. I'm curious if that's indicative of 52 weeks a year, or is this an anomaly?
It is definitely indicative of 52 weeks a year. But we're out here morning, and it's rare that we'll see a tennis player during the Monday through Friday timeframe. There's a group of 8 to 12 players. They're regular players that come out on the weekends, on Saturday and Sunday. It's the same players, and they are somewhat of an exclusive group. They do take the 2 courts, and they are the same ones that are there every weekend.
Awesome. Can you clarify? And just, I would like to say, like, I live in Southwest Santa Rosa, as a number of the people do. And, you know, there's a lot of pickleball players that live around here too. I mean, I don't know. There just haven't been that many tennis players that show up for tennis. Especially when we're asking, we're not trying to take away tennis court. We're trying to cross stripe so that you can play tennis and or pickleball, and whoever's there gets to play. Though the sign will be tennis players have priority, we just haven't seen that many tennis players here, especially Monday through Friday. We get people on Saturdays and Sundays. It's the same nice group of people that play on Saturdays and Sundays in the morning. But like Monday through Friday, there's hardly anybody from tennis there. I mean, and it's not like it's an either or situation. If a tennis ball goes on the pickleball side, you throw the tennis ball back, and same with a pickleball. It's not like an either or situation that I see.
I will say staff have not done an evaluation of the usage, but obviously Findlay is a location where we have our community center and a number of staff that are located there. And so the week results that they showed there seem to be representative of general usage out there.
So I see one of the committee's members' hand is up. Kathy, do you have a comment to piggyback on Linda's comments? If so, could you please go next?
Yes, I do. I wanted to say that at Finley, I've played every day for about 10 years. And except Sunday. Sunday I go and play at Windsor. And I just wanted to say that I have noticed that there are very rarely any tennis players who are there to play. So this one segment, the chart that you saw is indicative of what I see every single day. And even in rainy days, for example, we get out there, let's say it's rained the night before, we get out there at 9 in the morning, and then indeed people arrive, we have towels and squeegees. It takes about 45 minutes. We get the courts all dried off. We blow every day with our blower that we had purchased, and we're ready to play. So and then the tennis players on the weekend, they come out and then they use our blower and they use our towels and squeegees and everything too to get their courts ready. So there's kind of a nice community between the two types of players, and that's very refreshing. So indeed, this is not unusual. We see this every single day.
Thank you for that clarification, Kathy. Madonna?
Thank you for that, Kathy. That's very respectful and just community, what you just talked about there with the blower and the squeegees and stuff. What was the name? So it's Sonoma County Pickleball. I think I didn't hear the last part of that. I think Pat had said that. And then if I wanted to take some of my staff over and look at this game and try to play it, who would I contact?
Hi, this is Pat Crabtree. Yeah, the full name of our nonprofit is the Sonoma County Pickleball Club, LTD. And I think that the person you'd contact to play at Finley would be Kathy Kirsch for the most part. Probably Joanne or Linda also could help out there.
Thank you, Pat.
So just for reference, I think both those ladies' email addresses are on one of the earlier slides. And if we wanted an org listed, that could be put in the chat by somebody. Would that provide the information you're looking for, Madonna?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I'm just asking because at my job at Disability Services and Legal Center downtown, I and 3 other coworkers, when we were able to work there, we would play badminton in the back. So I'm thinking, we might want to put a little pickleball court back there for us when we are able to go back to work.
And Chair Kwan, we can put that in the chat. And just a reminder to the board, their contact information is also in the attachments to this presentation. The letters you receive have both those contact information as well as the Sonoma County Pickleball Club link.
Thanks for that, Jen. If we're done with our queries for now, I'm going to ask if there are any public comments, and then it will come back to the board for further discussion. Do we have any public comments at this time about this issue?
Yes, I do see hands raised. So I am going to, I see 8 hands raised, so we have quite a bit of public comment. I'm going to go ahead and call you by your screen name. And I will enable your ability to speak. If you'd like, you can please state your name, and then the timer will begin. The first person I'm going to allow to speak is Johnny Seraph. Go ahead, Johnny.
Okay, hello, hi, can you hear me, everyone?
Yes, thank you, Johnny.
Thank you. So I want to say that when the line, I play tennis at Finley. I play typically, late afternoon. I actually get there well ahead of the scheduled time that my friend and I will meet, just to ensure that I actually get a tennis court. So it may be quiet in the morning, but I know in the late afternoon, early evening, there are tennis players, and they do take up both courts when I've been there. I know that on one of the courts where there are lines where it's on the eastern side, I guess, of Finley, those extra lines make it impossible to use for tennis. You can't. It affects your depth of perception. It affects your ability to focus on, obviously, on the lines that you need to for that sport. And so it's not really feasible, because I tell you, as a tennis player, having the court that would be used for tennis, but also having lines on it for pickleball, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work that way. And I will say, I mean, we have the limited courts ourselves on the west side. I live nearby, near Finley. As you know, it's limited as far as tennis. And so to have just the two courts, to have the possibility of losing those is just a shame, I think. Pickleball is growing, I know, of course, as you mentioned, as the presenters mentioned, it is growing as a sport. Tennis is one of the four most played sports in the world. You're talking, I think I've read somewhere about 1 billion tennis players globally. So let's not lose sight of that there's a long history of a beautiful sport in tennis. And we're not talking about taking over pickleball courts. We're just talking about sharing the facility equally. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. Our next speaker will be Zheng Han. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I'd like to thank you, the board, for giving me the opportunity to speak and then listen to our voice. My name is Zheng Han. I live on the west side of the city about more than 20 years, and I've been, coming to Finley Park and play tennis, seeing kids and family play, then enjoying it for a year. I believe that in this community, we treasure equity and inclusion, and that would make the community a vibrant one, right? So I echo Johnny that we need the equity, the access to tennis player, and then especially it happened to as a nation minority here, and then we, our community very, we have low income level, and then access to the park, and play the game that we love is very important to us. So I think in 2013 we've been losing, 2 tennis courts from 4 tennis courts. That will result in a major disproportion of access to tennis for our community. And yes, we're talking about, striking, on the remain 2 tennis courts. Obvious right now is we have 6 pickleball courts and only 2 tennis courts, and you can hold 24 pickleball players as one, while, maximum tennis only at 8 players. So, and at Johnny point out, it's impossible for us to play on the multi-use court. So I think we should treasure the equity-oriented approach than the equality based on the number of player, and not talking about, I don't think we should get misled by the number also, because we are working class, low income, and then we don't have the luxury to come there every day to play tennis, which we love to. So, and then talking about the number of tennis, in USA alone, we have 21.64 million tennis players, while we only have 4.2 million pickleball players. So yes, I'm happy that, the sport is growing, but in a sense of inclusive, and then equity for this community, especially our, West Side low income people, it's very, very important for us, to have this 2 tennis courts the way it is, so that we can enjoy the tennis, and we can feel like we included, we have the same access level that we need, we'll be a lot half of it, but thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be screen name Nancy Farrick. Please go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you. 5 years ago, someone mentioned pickleball to me. Although I was almost 60 years old, I'd never played a sport, but convinced a friend to go to Findlay with me. Although we were interested in the fun we observed on the courts, our ambivalence won out and we turned to leave. Fortunately, Ken Kerr saw us, encouraged us to come in, loaned us paddles, and spent an hour introducing us to the game. I was hooked and currently play 5 to 6 days a week. I've made many close friends and we support each other and spend time together on and off the courts. My husband started playing pickleball soon after I began, and it was the first time in 30 years that we've been able to play a sport together. To say he is addicted is an understatement. We're thrilled our grown sons and their friends enjoy pickleball now and join us when they are in town or when we travel together. In fact, my 64-year-old husband and 28-year-old son recently partnered and won a bronze medal in a tournament in Sacramento. This is just one example of the inclusive and multi-generational nature of pickleball. The pickleball craze is hitting the country by storm, and Sonoma County is no exception. Courts are sorely lacking throughout the city of Santa Rosa. While our longtime ambassador, Kathy Kirst, has always welcomed and instructed new players at the request of Rexham Park, she now offers organized clinics 2 mornings a week. The upside is that many community members are learning the sport, including longtime tennis players, and based on our local Facebook page, more than 30 community members joined our ranks this month alone. The downside is with all the interest, lack of courts is an even bigger issue. I hope this forum is a step forward in a positive direction. In the short term, adding lines on existing tennis courts at Findlay is the best option and makes better use of an underutilized community resource. So often, as you've heard, the tennis courts stand empty during the week while 40 or more pickleball players take turns waiting to play. Additionally, it seems prudent for the board and city to line other underused tennis courts, or best case scenario, to have more dedicated courts, as pickleball interest is only going to increase. Now that my husband is on the tournament circuit, we've traveled around California and other states and have seen the surge of new public pickleball courts and complexes large enough to hold tournaments, which generate income for the city and accommodate the growing interest by community members of all ages and backgrounds. We hope the board will support and advocate for the growth of the sport in our community by converting underutilized tennis courts and adding more multi-use courts, so we will be able to continue to welcome many more pickleball enthusiasts of all ages and ability levels to our ranks.
Thank you, Nancy. Our next speaker will be Marty Cassidy. Please go ahead, Marty.
All right, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Marty Cassidy. I am a 5th grade teacher here at Helen Lehman Elementary School, which is considerably close to the Findlay courts. And I've been an educator for 25 years, entirely on the west side, Roseland School, Elsie Allen High School, and now here at Helen Lehman Elementary School. And I hear loud and clear the concerns about west side inequity. I've spent my entire career facing it and trying to overcome it. And I'm also a pickleball player. I spend a lot of time playing. I also spend a lot of time sharing my passion with my students, who are primarily minority, underserved, economically and socially economically disadvantaged families. Here at our school, our PE teacher does have one unit that focuses on paddle tennis or paddle sports. I have begun to expand that and have pop-up pickleball nets that I use here on our blacktop during school hours when available. It's limited, and I have been encouraging my students that are interested in playing to also check out Finley and their families as well. I recently needed nets and paddles. I reached out to the pickleball community and immediately had everything that I needed. Pickleball is a great sport for my students. Many of my students are students that struggle with health issues, honestly, and also with just finding activities that are suitable and enjoyable. So I've seen great enthusiasm for pickleball amongst my students, and I'm encouraging both my students and their families. It's an affordable, easy, accessible activity for all ages and ability levels. And I just want to, in my few seconds left, I do want to acknowledge both the speakers, Johnny and Zong, that did speak. There is a tennis community. I've been out there. I've said hi to them. I used to play tennis, and I would hate to see them lose their courts. It's not a great situation having multi-striping, but I personally believe we need in the city more courts, not just on the west side, but throughout the city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Our next speaker will be screen name Anna Huang. Go ahead, Anna. Go ahead and unmute, Anna.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you for letting me speak my voice regarding this matter. And I want to let the board know that, you know, I've been introduced to the tennis game through my husband, who has passed away 4 years ago. But my kids and I, we still enjoy the game of tennis. And my daughter is playing for the UC Santa Cruz for the tennis team, and my other daughter is playing in the high school. So this is a family game for me, and it's very close to me that tennis court is not available for us on the other side of town to be able to play. And we cannot come out to play in the morning like most seniors that out there in the pickleball community, because I have to work to support my kids. My kids have to go to school for their future to be a active, you know, in the community. So we cannot come out there to play. So their chart is not accurate to represent the tennis players like us in the West Side community. And I find it's very unfair and unjust that they are trying to push the tennis players away from the courts that only available for us, the 2 courts. And the court number 4, we cannot play because they're always there on the weekend. They're taking over the court number 4. And on top of that, it's only, you know, distracting the life. We cannot focus. And we have to practice our games just as much as they do to practice their games. So I believe that the tennis game has been in this community, in this United States and all over the world for years. And it's a beautiful game. It's a game they even have it for the wheelchair tennis association. So it's for all people, even young and old, everybody that come out. I have my niece come out that come to visit me to the city of Santa Rosa and play with me, and she's 4 or 5 years old. So why are we pushing those players away? I understand that the game is exploding or expanding, but don't forget that our tennis sport has a history and is still enjoyable, and it's still a beautiful sport, and we still love to play. So it's not a dying sport. So just don't kill all of the players that want to play out there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Anna. Our next speaker will be screen named Philip Stepanek. Go ahead, Philip.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, go ahead, thank you.
Thank you. Many of my comments are in line with what many of the other tennis supporters have said. I just want to reiterate some of those. Finley courts historically have been a hub of that local community, and it really is wonderful to have local courts that you can go on that are at your neighborhood with familiar faces. And even the reduction from 4 courts down to 2, like when they say that these numbers aren't as spectacular as they used to be, it's because they used to be more 4 courts, and these drop-in matches on the weekend mornings, which are the same times that pickleball players want to play for the same reasons. It's just a lovely day to start the day, and so reducing from 4 courts down to 2 has already diminished that community. Reducing it down from 2 to 0, it's going to kill the community. Even reducing down from 2 to 1 is going to kill the community. And then the claims that the multi-use courts, the courts are basically useless at that point. Like, you can hit on them, but any competitive play is basically destroyed at that point. And then I'd also like to emphasize that this is not a conversation about the merits of tennis versus the merits of pickleball. All the statements about pickleball being multi-generational, multi-ethnic, different skill levels, wonderful way to burn calories and get exercise. These things apply to tennis as well. So it should not be a competition between the 2 sports. It should simply be a question of fairly allocating resources. On the west side of town, there are 6 pickleball courts and there are 2 tennis courts. This is already skewing it farther to accommodate a vocal and affluent subset of the community isn't a fair answer. The non-vocal majority should be considered as well. Government shouldn't be run by squeaky wheel. It should be run by fairly considering all the needs of the group and the community and allocating the resources the best you can. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Philip. Our next speaker will be Ken Kirst. Go ahead, Ken.
Hi, my name is Ken Kirst.
Oh, Ken, is there something on? There you go. Thank you.
Okay. I've been playing pickleball at Finley Park since tennis courts 3 and 4 were striped for pickleball, 1 pickleball court on each tennis court. That was in September of 2011. I've played from 9 to at least 11:30 every morning, Monday through Saturday, that the weather was good, I didn't have to work, or I was out of town. Thus, I've been at Finley the great majority of weekday mornings for the past 10 years. During this 10-year period, the tennis courts on weekday mornings are not used very much. There is an occasional couple playing singles. Rarely both courts have been used. Most weekday mornings, the courts are empty. Saturday mornings, the courts are definitely in use by the same group of 8 to 15 players who have been playing together for at least the last 10 years. The proposal to stripe pickleball courts take this usage pattern into account. The courts could only be used for pickleball weekday mornings and only when no tennis players wish to use the courts. I admit the lines could be somewhat of a distraction, or would be a distraction, but I think most athletes would answer, when pressed, that they intuitively know the boundaries of their playing area. To sum up, number 1, I can say with absolute certainty from my own observation and experience that over the past 10 years, tennis play on weekday mornings at Finley is weak to non-existent. Number 2, over the past 10 years, tennis usage at Finley Park on weekday mornings has stayed the same. It has not grown and has remained minimal. So much so that it would make sense to convert the entire complex to pickleball courts. But I digress. That's not on the table and I know it. Number 3, tennis courts are not being reduced or taken away. The proposal is to share a resource currently reserved for one sport, which is underutilized by that sport. These are public courts funded by taxpayers. The more they are used, the more citizens are served. The small distraction of some lines on a court is grossly outweighed by the sensible use of expensive public assets by the greatest number of taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Our next speaker will be Ta Dang. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ta. Go ahead, Ta. Ta, are you available? We'll go ahead and come back to Ta. Our next speaker will be Peter Tran. Go ahead, Peter. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
We can, thank
Hello?
you. Go ahead, Peter.
Okay, thank you. Yes, my name is Peter Tran, and I'm here to give my 2 cents worth in favor of keeping the tennis courts the way it is. I agree with the pickleball community is on a rise, and there's a huge demand for the courts. But in terms of the west side, that already have 4 courts and 2 already is taken up by the pickleball communities. That leaves 2 courts left, and playing tennis is a fast-paced sport. The balls travel much faster, and by striping the lines, it is much harder for tennis players to make the right call, and therefore it makes it not as competitive. And a lot of players who are tennis opponent don't like the kind of courts that are hybrid, like the proposal of pickleball communities. So in terms of that, it is so much harder for the tennis players to make the right calls, and therefore it is not the game is no longer as competitive like we would like to have. On the other hand, is they're calling for pickleball is calling for efficient use of the Finley courts for pickleball players, but we're not building, we're not making any more courts. So I suggest maybe that you can consider like high school tennis courts striping for pickleball players, because they're claiming that there's going to be a lot of cost involved, and there's not many courts. But you see, Finley already has given up 50% of the courts for pickleball, and there's no for pickleball players to add more lines and hybrid courts is very confusing for tennis players. And the one thing is the number 4 court that they have hybrid, it is so much harder to play there, because every time the tennis ball hits at an angle, a couple of times players can get hurt because they're trying to return the ball, and there's that net, that pickleball net post, it's in the way, and several times a couple of tennis players almost hurt themselves because of the hybrid situation on tennis on the court number 4. And if you hit it at a certain angle, it's very hard to hit back because of the situation of that, the way they lined up the courts. So there's got to be a better way to solve this, and not just take the remaining 2 courts from the west side. And there isn't a whole lot of tennis courts available now for the tennis players. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Peter. Our next speaker will be Billy Andre. Go ahead, Billy.
All right. My name is Billy Andre. I'm the lead pastor at the Bridge Church in Santa Rosa. And I lost my home in the Tubbs fire in 2017. In addition to losing my home, we had 30 families in our church lose homes as well. And so I went through this season of just overwhelming grief as I walked with family members of my church, and even with my own family. I had 3 teenagers at the time. And I went through a bout of depression and PTSD, started getting counseling, but I just kind of was in a pretty dark hole for a little while. And I remember one day I was just taking a walk, and that's about all I could do at that point. I couldn't really exercise. I could barely get out of the house. And I went over to Pioneer High School, and I saw this guy, and he was over hitting a wiffle ball against the wall with a paddle. And I go, man, what is that? And I walked over to the guy and I said, hey, what is that? He explained it was pickleball. And he asked me if I wanted lessons. And I said, I didn't have money for lessons. So I he said, I'll give him lessons for free. And so his name is Hung, and he's just a really cool guy from Vietnam, and just a really, really sweet guy. So we started meeting weekly, and it got me out, started exercising, started teaching me the game. And for the first time, and I would say about 10 months, I started to actually look forward to doing something. And I started playing in so that was in 2018. I think it was like the first day of 2019, I went out and actually played some games. And I'm an athlete. I'm 45, but I used to wrestle, so I can't do that anymore. And so I'm thinking, okay, I'm a little embarrassed to go out there with a paddle and wiffle ball. Am I really going to play this sport? But I'll probably dominate because I'm an athlete or whatever. So I go out there, and there's some 70-year-old women out there, and they just demolished me. And it was awesome. I was like so humbled, and I'm like, okay, there's a lot more to this game than just the physical part, their strategy and all this kind of stuff. And I just got absolutely hooked on it. And so it has been such a huge part of my mental health, my physical recovery. I've developed a ton of new friendships in the pickleball community. And I just wanted to kind of offer this big idea that I think we're sitting on an incredible healing part of our community by getting people that are depressed. They've gone through COVID, they've gone through fires. Now, we've got some flooding happening this past weekend, but our community has experienced so much trauma that I just know from personal experience that I have benefited so greatly from pickleball that it has actually healed my mental health issues. So I just think expanding the pickleball community any way we can is going to be great. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. It looks like the next speaker is Tim. Tim, we've enabled your speaking permissions.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Oh, hi. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak up here. I believe that any sport, they're all beautiful, very good for everybody. I don't want to compare to which one to which. The point here, the meeting today, I'm thinking that we're talking about drawing the yellow line on the tennis court have the effect on the game of people playing or not. And like Billy Andre, he just mentioned earlier about Hung To. Hung To is a pickleball player. He's very famous, and he's also a trainer. I talked to him the other day. He also mentioned to me about the court, even the court number 4 with the yellow line, the paint on it. Most of pickleball players, they don't like to play on those courts. Imagine in our tennis court, it's more complicated. I would say tennis game is more complicated than pickleball. Like Peter mentioned earlier, the ball goes fast with the high speed. It's very hard to navigate, to look at the lines. And it's very confused for tennis player. And Hung To also talked to me a solution that if pickleball people, they can organize their time to come out, it would be great because they have more space, more chance to play. Instead of they all come out at the same time. And we are tennis player, we just come out on the weekend because we have to work. Most people have to work. So, and another solution Hung To mentioned that if they can use the, like you said, they arrange the time for people to play. And the other thing is they've been using the temporary tape to tape over the tennis court when no tennis player over there. So maybe they can find better solution than painting on a tennis court. That's the only 2 tennis court in the west side of Santa Rosa. And thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Christopher Williams. Go ahead, Christopher.
Thank you. Hi. I bought my house close to Finley Park 22 years ago because there were 4 tennis courts, because there was a pool, because there was volleyball. When pickleball came into existence, well, I mean, I understand that we need to share resources, but you've taken 1 court away at Howarth, so that's only maybe 1/7 of the facility at Howarth. You've taken nothing away from Galvin Park, which has you took over 2 tennis courts there for junior tennis courts, which I never see anyone use. You could take over 2 to 3, even 4 courts over there, and you still have 10 courts at Galvin. Here at Finley Park, there are, and those are all on the east side of the courts, on the east side of the city. We have only 2 remaining public tennis courts. And when you start redrawing lines on tennis courts, it makes it really hard to play. It's not as fun anymore. I've been playing for 50 years, and I hope to be playing even longer. I didn't buy my house because there were pickleball courts here. I would have thought differently if you were going to, if I couldn't have walked to my tennis courts, I would have bought somewhere differently. Well, I can't, I'm not rich. I don't have the money that I can just up and go. And so now you want to take the 2 remaining courts that affect not just me, but it affects a lot of working people. The people that can play pickleball, they're not all working people. And if they are workers, they can come out in the afternoon. I just think that you should think about the whole community, not just because pickleballers, it's a growing sport. Spend a little money. Go take over some of the courts over at Galvin Park, but don't take everything away from Finley, which for me, I can tolerate 2 courts because we have to, try to incorporate everybody. But I don't know why we don't want to spend, maybe need to spend some more money instead of taking at the expense of tennis players. Why not spend a little bit of money? If it's that important, put a little bit of more money into the park, put some lights in there, but don't just do it at the expense of tennis players. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Our next speaker will be Ta Dang. Go ahead, Ta. Ta, we cannot hear you. Ta, we still can't hear you. Unfortunately, Ta, your voice is not being heard by us. It does appear that you're unmuted. I'm not sure why we can't hear you. Okay, well, unfortunately, we are not able to hear you. You can still submit an email to the BOC email address if you would like to have your comments from today heard. Thank you. Chair Quant, I have no additional public comments.
Thank you so much. Jen, I'm going to ask one question that I asked you before that was brought up, and that is lights on the courts, on all the courts at Finley. Is that an option?
Not at this time. That's not a short-term solution. Plus, we also have an agreement with our neighbors next door, the residential units for noise. I would have to check that to see if lights are included in that.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring it back to the board for further discussion. Let's not state our stance. Let's have a discussion. Simple raising of hands for discussion or further clarification. Anybody? Okay, so maybe we are ready to move forward, and I need some help from staff in our position on what we think should happen. Do we need to align? Is it majority rules? Where do we go on something like this where we're providing advice to Park and Rec Department?
Even though we're not technically taking a roll call vote, we will be looking at a majority to move forward with double lines. If we don't see that, then we're going to keep going with our plans to look at other options.
Okay, not what I would consider ideal, but we can work with this. So if you've got your ideas together and would like to present something for the other board members to consider, raise your hand, no particular order. Terry.
Well, I have actually a couple questions just for clarification. Is there no temporary vinyl or tape system that could be utilized? I recognize that it would be time consuming probably to set it up, and there may need to be some scheduling involved. But other than paint, permanent paint, is there any temporary system that the pickleball groups could use on the tennis courts so that would allow the tennis players to use the courts without additional lines?
I don't know the exact specifics of it. I believe there's a tape product that has been used out at Galvin for some of the sharing there. My understanding, though, is I don't think that that's, probably the time consuming aspect of it is I don't think that's something that's done just for day of use. I think that's something that's been put down and has remained out there for continual use, but would be more temporary than the paint would be.
I actually did some online research about the tape and read that tennis balls react differently when they hit the tape than they do when they hit concrete. So it's an inconsistent game, tape versus concrete. I don't know how much effect, but I did read that in one of the reviews of tape versus paint.
Right, and I will say that when I was visiting with the pickleball team, they had put down temporary tape that was being removed by the tennis players. We're assuming because, again, it was probably not the best for the tennis play, but we're not sure. But I did observe that happening.
Terry, were you through, or?
I am through for now. I may have additional questions, but I'd like to hear from other members of the board.
Great. Logan?
Thanks, Carol. Jen, I'm still not clear. So is this going to go to the city council with basically the same presentation, but they're not casting a vote?
Oh yeah, no, I'm so sorry. No, this is it. This is the stop for this. It is not traveling to the city council. We're not looking for funds. If the board would like to see something like this happen, we're looking to the pickleball groups to fundraise for that, and they have agreed to that. So this is the end of this discussion so far. Certainly we can take anything to council, but that wasn't the intention here. Again, because we're looking at a temporary solution.
Okay, so whatever direction or advice we give, there's going to be more opportunities for folks to comment before you actually make these changes, or this is the last chance for the public to comment?
This is the last chance for this item. So folks can still submit an email comment that will be included in the record, but it's not going to be heard tonight.
And then I guess we didn't hear this. What is the timeline for doing this work? When would it be completed? Jeff or Jen?
Yeah, I don't know if we have Jeremy on, Jeremy Gundy with park maintenance, but it's a project that they would be taking the lead of actually doing the lining of the courts. But I would assume, I mean, obviously weather, right? Hopefully we continue to get rain. I think we would all like to see that. But I think this is something that we see feasible in people playing dual lined courts by spring 2022. And would refer to Jeremy if I misspoke there.
Okay, I'll just share. Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know we do have James Castro present if he would like to talk about timeline more.
Sure. If James has a more clear answer than Jeff, go ahead, James. If not, if there's nothing to add, no need to pull in James.
I don't have anything more to add. Park maintenance is ready to go when we get the green light.
Got it. Okay. I still feel some discomfort, like Carol indicated, with going forward with this right now. Because it doesn't feel like we've heard from enough of the community that wants to keep a tennis court. I think a solution could be to change one tennis court and keep the other one. But I still think that hasn't really been presented to all the users yet of the facility. That seems like a simple solution though to me right now. It's just to keep one and change one. I think I still would like to see a little more information on how that would happen, like a fence between the two or some sort of safety some precautions since that was brought up. But that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you, Logan. Steve?
Yes, I think we've have a wealth of information in front of us, and we've had all the board members have had ample time to research this nationwide, statewide, locally, Findlay specific. I think we should make a recommendation now. And I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the city council that they accept and fund the recommendation that staff and the club made to us today.
So Steve, you're kind of jumping the gun again.
Yeah, I know, but you can make a motion anytime.
Let's let the rest of the board weigh in.
I know, but a motion can be made at any time. So if there's not a second, I understand that. And I more than respect the other board members. I just might think that we've heard we have a tremendous amount of information. All of us have had opportunities to go over to and watch the pickleball courts play at Findlay. We've had opportunities to do that. I think it's time to make a decision and recommend something to the city council.
So staff, could you weigh in on points of procedure, please?
Is there a second?
Right, and I'll just clarify with you, Board Member Spillman, that we are not looking for a recommendation to council. We're looking for a recommendation back to the community and back to staff, so we know what to do. If you are wanting to change that and wanting this to go to council, we can open that discussion, but we are not intending to go to council with this at this time.
I understand what staff is recommending on that. And my motion is that there's a tremendous amount of information that we all have available to us. We've had many weeks and months to research it ourselves. We've heard a lot from various folks in the community. And I just think it's time to take some action rather than postpone it one more time.
Great, I appreciate that. And I will clarify too that, like Jeff mentioned it or in the beginning, we're trying something new because this is an urgent thing that's come up in front of us. Normally, we would take our time and go back out in the community and do our thorough research. Certainly, that's not going to happen until sometime next year, if that's what the board direction would be. So just so you know, from a timing perspective, that if we're looking to come back at a later date, it's not going to be until sometime next year at the earliest,
Yeah,
due to staff schedules.
I can appreciate that, but I was also, it was somewhat concerned when we were talking about Creekside, and it took us 11 years to make a decision. I mean, I don't want to see it being another 11 years.
Right,
To make a decision on a sport that is accelerating tremendously, and Santa Rosa has such an opportunity to be the epicenter of this sport in the Bay Area, and we're behind the ball with regard to the demand and the supply. The city is providing the supply and our citizens are demanding it, and we can't meet that today. I think we can make a recommendation to City Council.
So again, this is not going to City Council. I could count on both hands and both feet and still need more digits for the number of things we are not supplying to our park and rec users. We are behind the curve on, Jen, what do you think? Pretty much every sport? Pickleball is not alone in being underserved. I'm sorry, I appreciate your passion, but it's not alone. Could we hear from Madonna or Carolina? And Steve, we can come back to you if you have additional points to make.
I will have no additional comments to make.
Thank you. So I'm kind of, where Logan's at with, sharing. And I appreciate the comment from the public in regards to mental health and trauma. As a Lakota and Pomo woman, that's something I am very aware of. And, with Steve, the 11 years on the creek, the Washington Redskins was something my grandmother had already died before she could see that was a fight she fought her whole life. She was not able to see that change made. But I'm somebody who wants to be fair. I want to be fair to both the tennis players and the pickleball players. And I live less than a mile from Findlay as well. So I want to share, like Logan says, and Carol, not just giving it all to the pickleball ballers, but sharing it. Thank you.
Carolina, did you want to say anything?
No, I would like to try the temporary fix for the restriping and see how it's going to be a couple of years at the max. And I would like to try that rather, and I appreciate that the presentation that the folks made, and it looks like they're trying very, very hard to get along, all of them. So why don't we give them a try?
Point well taken. During the presentation, I put down a couple of new notes, thinking outside the box, because the box is very small and there's too many people trying to play in the box at the same time. One is, might it be affordable to put up sun netting over some of the courts to extend the pickleball day? One of the presenters said it gets too hot in the summer, that there's only certain hours that the pickleballers could play. Is that something that could be considered? Another point that was mentioned in the comments was dual striping. It doesn't work. Could it be that these particular colors do not lend themselves to dual striping? Are there other combinations of colors that are used in other courts that might be more conducive for 1 or 2 dual stripe courts. I'm looking for compromises here. I'm looking for everyone to feel that they're part of the included community, not part of the excluded community. Having said that, temporary painting, I don't know what that means. I have to fall back to the position, whatever changes are made are going to be with us for a while and may require some staff monitoring. And this means time being taken away from other projects that our limited staff is working on. I know the pickleball community is well-intentioned, but we need to have a third party examining the situation and talking to all the participants, not a vested interest, no matter how diplomatic and unbiased they try to be. You cannot step outside of your own position. I would love to see a dedicated tennis court at Finley. So we have options. As I see it, and I'm going to put this up to staff to either shake your head furiously or nod. One option is, oh, I see 2 hands raised. We'll go to Madonna first this time.
Thank you so much. So just really quick, the stripes, I was thinking in my head, like, okay, we have more land, right? So what is a small, like San Francisco place or New York? What are these big cities with no land? How are they doing it with the striping, right? What colors are they using? I have that thought. And then also what you mentioned with the shading. Yes, let's buy some shading, simple fixes. So those were just my 2 thoughts on what you just commented. Thank you, Carol.
Terry?
You're on
Terry,
mute.
Thank you. Sorry. So where I sort of landed is, in looking at this proposal and hearing the presentation and looking at the usage of the courts, the proposal makes perfect sense to me. Where I got hung up, I think where we were all sort of hung up, is the fact that there are only 2 tennis courts on the west side of Santa Rosa. And I did not anticipate that the lines would make the courts unusable as the tennis players represented. I guess for me, what I'd like to hear is there some way, in addition to perhaps exploring a different color scheme for the lining that might work better, could the pickleball community and the tennis community meet and see if there's some agreement about what striping might work best for both players? When I stood on the tennis court 4 at Finley and looked at the pickleball lines and the tennis line, now I do not play tennis regularly. I haven't played tennis in years, but it looked workable to me. But like I said, I don't play tennis every day. So is there some way of lining the courts in a way that works for both groups? I would really like these groups to come together and see if they could explore that a little bit more. On top of, can we find additional courts at schools perhaps that could be utilized for the tennis community on the west side of Santa Rosa? So that's kind of where I've landed in terms of going forward. So.
Thank you, Terry. So I'll go back to the nodding and the shaking of heads. I see we have 3 options. One is we're not ready to make a decision. More research needs to be done. And hopefully it's winter. I know the pickleball community, I too have been out there in the mornings and seen the squeegees and the towels. The pickleball community will play rain or shine. Tennis players, you've either got to be crazy or real diehard to be out there getting a sopping wet tennis ball to play. So one option is to use these wet months to do some more research on how things could be augmented, be it netting, be it a backboard, be it different colors, be it the two communities getting together and working something out. That's one. That's kind of a pause. Another is to go forward with the presentation as it was presented and dual stripe the far west courts. Third option is a compromise of some kind where one tennis court is taken out of dedicated tennis play. The other tennis court is left in dedicated tennis play, potentially a backboard dual marked for both tennis and pickleball drills, which could potentially accommodate a number of single players or people waiting for a dedicated court or needing to do drills. Those are the three options. Hit reset or study, go with the plan as it was presented, compromise. Would it be fair for us to take a show of hands for those three options? Have I left something out?
Carol, I believe that covers it pretty well. The one thing I would add is that I would say in some ways the first and third option are the same in terms of what staff would be receiving. A pause on it or looking at other options. In some ways are both a pause on it, right, to do further evaluation. So it would just be the future direction of what possible options to look into.
Terry.
Would it be possible to, what would be a good time frame to do this on a trial basis? I hate to spend $15,000 for a trial basis, but I'm wondering, would it be possible to maybe add 4 courts in the West courts and revisit whether this is working for both communities at some point down the road, whether it be 6 months, or is the expenditure of the money really intended to bridge until we have a more permanent solution?
Do you want to go ahead? I would say this, that if we're going to put paint down on a court, it's going to be there for a long time because the maintenance to remove it is pretty intense. So I would say if the board can provide us essentially with either we're going to move forward with the striping after today, or we're going to look at other options and come back next year or whenever the pickleball group can regroup and come back with something different. That would be really helpful.
Okay, that's pretty harsh, but that's reality. So let's put feet forward and do a show of hands for people who want to move forward with the plan as presented today. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we would need 4 hands to go up, correct? To move forward as presented. Okay, we just made 4 hands. Again, could you guys put your 4 hands up one more time, all at the same time? So we have Steve, we have Madonna, we have Carolina, and we have Terry saying, let's move forward with the plan as proposed. I assume that the Park and Rec Department still has the ability to do some fine tuning, be it paint colors, where the nets are stored, all of that, which is outside of our purview. Is that correct?
Yes, we'll definitely continue to work with both the tennis and pickleball players and and try to make this as beneficial to both groups as possible moving forward.
Great. And I'm going to be optimistic yet again and hope that we have real winter and ask that sometime early summer, depending on weather and conditions, that staff gets back to us and reports back on how things are going. And perhaps we can all be eyes and ears on the pickleball court and the tennis court to see for ourselves how it's going. Yes? So with that, I want to say thank you very much to the presenters and to staff and to the board. It is 6:37 and we still have another item on our agenda. We're going to take a break. We all deserve a break, but I'm going to ask Jen, how much longer do you think we're going to need to discuss Dutch floor? And find out if any of our board members have prior commitments, and how many members we need to maintain quorum. And Steve has a question, so I'm going to jump over to him.
Yes, I had prior equipment an hour ago. So I need to go to the hospital to see, anyway, like that's details, but I gotta go.
Thank you, Steve.
Chair Claw, we will still have a quorum, I believe. One. Yes, we still have 5. Oh, you are muted.
Thank you. How many people do we need for a quorum?
5. Right? Yes.
Okay, so next question, how ballpark? What do you think we have for additional time commitment? Because once we start, if someone else leaves, we have to start over, correct?
That's correct. If anybody else leaves, we'll have to do this again in December. So we usually leave 40 minutes for master plan presentations, but I think the presentation itself is relatively quick, about 20 minutes. And then just depending on how much discussion we have after that. So it could be anywhere from 25 to 45 minutes.
So it would be comfortable to say that we should be done by 7:30. Oh, no, I'm going to say 7:45 because we're going to take a rest stop. Is everybody good hanging out for Dutch Floor Park until 7:30? Yeah? Oh,
Yes.
Yes? Carolina?
I was curious, is our December agenda really jammed that we couldn't put this in December? I believe we probably won't have a November meeting because of Thanksgiving. Is that right?
That's correct. We will not have a meeting in November. Our meeting in December is already pretty full. So this would make for
Okay,
a
no,
similar-
okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking when we start earlier, we're fresher, that's all. But if we can't do it, then in December, then we need to do it today.
Jen, is there a date for when a Dutch Floor does need to go to City Council, correct?
That's correct. We're looking for a roll call vote tonight for Dutch Floor and then moving to council.
And has that been scheduled on their calendar yet?
No, we need to do this first and then we'll schedule.
Perfect. Okay, so it is 6:40, 5-minute break. Outside, this is going to take an hour. Is everybody good to hang until 7:40? If you are not, we need to know now. So show a thumbs for good till 7:45. All right. Okay, so awesome. See you all back here in 5 minutes, 6:45. Great, thank you. So Carolina, I saw you with a great big printout of the master plan. Where did you get it? Was I mistaken? You seem to have a big color master plan. Did you print it out?
Yes, you mean of Dutch floor?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I printed it out.
Oh, good for you.
Well, I like to kind of read it, you know. And I like reading off of paper so I can flip it around. So yeah, I've done that with all the parks.
So I did a little black and white one and put little
okay.
tags on it, but yours is awesome.
Well, it's easier to read, Carol. Yeah. Good job tonight.
So when I went on the Parks Board, I had the choice of several, and I picked Parks because it was non-controversial.
We don't want to bring that up.
So I think we're all back. Hopefully you had time to take care of some business, get something to drink. And we are moving on to what should be a real joyful presentation, which is a presentation of the Dutch Floor Master Plan. Joining us tonight is Assistant Park Planner Tim Bernard, who's going to go through the design package with us. And also Haley from the Design Consultant, who's been working with us for a very long time. And on that, I'm just going to turn it over to Haley and Tim. Okay, good. Away you go.
Hey, Tim, just quick question for you. We see that Carrie's listed as an attendee. It's not allowing us to promote her as a panelist. So if you're wanting her to show up, she may need to log off and re-log back on. So we can attempt to do that when we see her name pop back up.
It will just be me tonight. So you can, she was my backup because my wife is 39 and a half weeks pregnant. So.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. Chair Quant, Vice Chair Griffin, board members, and public attendees. My name is Tim Bernard, and I'm an Assistant Park Planner. I'm also the project manager for Dutch Floor Master Plan Amendment. And that's why we're here that's what we're here to speak about tonight. We started this project in February with a main objective of updating play and fitness equipment as well as accessibility throughout the park. We had 3 public meetings to gain comment and feedback along the way. And after 7 months, we are happy to be here to present the master plan amendment. We have been working with Haley Watterson and her team from Plural Landscape Architecture Studio in San Francisco. She is going to walk us through the design process we took to get to this point in the master plan amendment. I'd like to turn it over to Haley.
Good evening, everyone. Haley Watterson with Plural. Thanks for staying late for us tonight. I'll try to get through this as concise as I can. All right, next slide, please. So this has been our team, myself, Carrie, and Miriam in our office in San Francisco, working closely with Jen and Tim. And then we also wanted to just give a special thanks out to Principal Tran and the school at Biola Elementary. Next slide. So Dutch Floor Neighborhood Park is located in the first quadrant. They're highlighted in yellow. It's located near the red star here on the map. Next slide. A little bit of background on the park. The park was formed in 1983 and 84 when a school and 2 subdivisions were being planned, and they both dedicated space for this park. And in 1989, the park was completed and named Sunburst Park. And the park that's there today is the original park that was completed in 1989. It is 2.8 acres. It has 2 children's play areas, adult fitness equipment, and a few picnic tables, which I'll point out to you on an existing aerial in the following slides. And then in 1992, the park was renamed to Dutch Floor Park after the city's longtime police chief, Melvin Dutch Floor. And then in last year, an RFP was put out for a landscape architecture team to update the master plan, which would include the play areas, fitness, and upgraded park infrastructure and accessibility. So we are now nearing the end of this first master plan phase of the project. Next slide. So this is the existing master plan. This plan is actually rotated counterclockwise with north onto the left. The rest of the images and graphics of the plan will be rotated with north up, just so you guys know. During this master plan, the triangle wedge that is there today was not yet included into the park. It would be on the left side here. The school Biella is up in the top left corner. And this master plan represents more or less what's there today. The 2 locations of the 2 play areas. The one on the left is the 5 to 12 play area. And the one on the right is a tot lot around 2 to 5 age area. There's many mature trees that are planted at this time and still exist today. And also nice perimeter trees that provide good buffering to the neighbors. Next slide. All right, so we were kind of looking sideways at that one, and this one is now rotated face up, and the rest of the plans will be this orientation, with Exeter Drive on the left, Whitechapel Way on the bottom here, and the pink line is representative of the park outline. So it shares an edge with Biella Elementary School. It's a completely open edge currently. The yard and the blacktop are kind of continuous with the lawn of the park. There's a gentle slope from Biella Elementary School down to the corner of Exeter and Whitechapel. You can see the 2 playgrounds represented here, and we can look into them a little bit more closely on the next slide. Next slide, please. There we go. So the image on the right is a photo of the existing park. It's very beautiful. It has many large, healthy, mature trees. It has a nice kind of open quality to it. The 2 play spaces are outlined on a diagram on the left. They're the 2 pink shapes. The pink shape on the top is the existing 5 to 12 play area, and the pink shape on the bottom is the 2 to 5 play space. They're currently about 150 feet apart from each other, which makes it quite challenging for parents or caregivers to observe children in these 2 different age groups, and also causes some older kids and younger kids to play in the other play spaces. Just north of the 5 to 12 play space, there's an existing fitness equipment. And the fitness equipment and the play equipment are original to that 1989 with some modifications and adjustments here and there, but they are at the end of their lifespan. So this project really needs new playground equipment. There's a couple of picnic tables that are scattered throughout the park, and then a seating area to the west of the 5 to 12 play space, where there's a planter and a drinking fountain there. Next slide. So starting this master plan, we wanted to outline clear goals and objectives. The goals are really high level things we're trying to achieve. They are to create a safe and welcoming park and playground, first and foremost. We wanted to improve the connectivity and accessibility and really the usability of the park. There are some paths that don't meet accessibility codes, so looking at making those improvements. And then enhance the park's beauty, which is already a very beautiful park. So we want to enhance that and build upon it. And and getting more into the specifics and our objectives in that are to update the 2 playgrounds and to create more connectivity between the 2, to update the adult fitness area, to update the paths to make sure they're all accessible, and update the park infrastructure, including drainage, irrigation, and some of the site furnishings. Next slide. Since February, as Tim mentioned, we've had 3 community meetings. They were all held, unfortunately, remotely on Zoom. Following those meetings, there were online surveys. The presentation and the any survey questions that happened in the Zoom meetings were then put online. And we had anywhere from 17 to 34 participants in the community meetings. And then the online survey respondents were anywhere from 53 to 64 respondents. We also engaged the Puyallup Elementary School. We originally met with Principal Tran, and she was very excited about this project and the potential to get the students involved. So we came up with this idea of a school-wide brainstorm where the classrooms had I think a week-and-a-half long project where students got together and worked either together as a class or independently, and came up with some ideas for the playground. And we'll see some of those sketches in the following slides. So it was really fun for us. We presented to each of these grade groups and talked a little bit about what landscape architecture is, how park master plans work, and then invited the students to dream about their playground. Next slide. At each one of these community meetings, we asked a series of questions to get a sense of who we were able to connect with during these community meetings. And these are graphs from the first community meeting, but they're pretty representative of all 3 of the community meetings. Seeing here on the left that 80% of the participants lived in the quadrant of the park, and that almost 70% of the participants use the park weekly, if not daily. So we felt pretty good that we were reaching the real users of the park. Next slide. Our approach to the community meetings was to really start with the first community meeting with some of the kind of macro decisions, how to kind of start to lay out the park. And as we moved through the community meetings, we started to get down into the kind of more micro decisions that we were working through. So during community meeting number 1, we focused on primarily 3 things. 1, the site organization. Second is the playground look and feel. And the third was the playground components. So for the site organization, we put forth these 3 options, and they were really looking at the main amenity program elements and how they are related to each other, and the way that they're next to each other within the park, where they're laid out. And we discussed the kind of pros and cons of relocating playgrounds and moving fitness equipment. A lot of these schemes were trying to take advantage of some of the flat grading pads that already exist, like for where the current playgrounds are today. For the look and feel of the playgrounds, we shared a series of kind of characters of the playground that we could go after, knowing that in the master plan phase, we would not be kind of fully building out and selecting all the components of the playground, but we wanted to understand enough to help us give the right shape and the form to the playground. So we asked folks about that. We also asked about playground components. Again, knowing that some of the larger components do take some planning at this level to fit, like a zip line, for example, which the community got really excited about. It's going to take up a good amount of space, so planning for those early would be important to the master plan. Next slide. These are the feedback that we received. So we took, after every community meeting, the results we heard from the meeting and the results from the online, and we combined them and we shared them back with the community. So these charts are representative of the combined results. So it was a very strong preference for site organization C, which had the 2 playgrounds right next to each other. and had the picnic spaces just south of the bottom of the playgrounds, and then had the fitness equipment scattered around the park versus a kind of centralized location. The look and feel feedback that we got was there was no kind of clear winner or a clear kind of desirable approach to the character. You know, traditional and natural were up there in the votes, but we decided to kind of take another step in the next community meeting where we looked at combining some of these ideas and actually providing multiple options for playgrounds to try to get a little bit closer to what folks were after. The playground components are the you know, slides and gliders, swings, climbing, and motion were the big things that came out, and specifically zip line was mentioned a couple of times. Next slide. Then through the Bio Elementary School, we received dozens of wonderful sketches and drawings and even some writing. So we kind of collected them all, we reviewed them, and came up with this word cloud below as a way to kind of gather all the information, where we just took the elements that we were seeing and kind of populated them together to make this word cloud. So in the way that word clouds work, the biggest word represents the most occurrences of it in these drawings. So swings and climbing were in there. And I was also really happy to see that kids are really value trees and grass and bushes and really want their parks to be green. Next slide. So we came to community meeting number 2. We presented 3 master plan options, and each one of those options were paired with 3 playground options. And we presented this in a way that the playgrounds could be kind of interchangeable to the master plans, but we wanted to try to get to the character of the playgrounds a little bit more because there was such kind of even voting on the previous round. All of these schemes took a starting place from the site organization C that had the 2 playgrounds close together. So each one of these options has the 2 playgrounds. We're taking advantage of that existing 5 to 12 playground location where we have you know, a large kind of flat graded area already, and brings the small 5 to 12, the 2 to 5 next to it. It has the fitness equipment along the north side. Some of the options added like option B, added a group picnic area where larger groups could be accommodated. There could even be barbecues there. The other differences are in the way that we were treating the stormwater treatment gardens that would be required for this project, which we were looking at the kind of natural low point of the site, which is at the corner of Exeter and Whitechapel. So these are some of the kind of subtle differences that we provided in these options. And the 3 playground options we called Dry Creek, Loops, and Enchanted Forest. The Dry Creek option was really inspired by the Santa Rosa Creek that's a few blocks away, and was really pulling from that natural character that folks were interested in. The Loops playground concept was looking at more of a kind of artful graphic approach, looking at a way to provide a kind of chasing loop through the playground that would correlate to some interesting playground structures that we found that also have this kind of loop character to them. The third scheme was the Enchanted Forest. This was looking at providing more tree canopy and providing a playground environment kind of in and around that canopy that had a kind of whimsical theme to it. Next slide. The feedback that we got from community meeting number 2 was a pretty strong preference for master plan option C. And those main differences were the stormwater garden had a way to get into it. It had a path and a bench. There's more adult fitness stations than the other options. There was more shade and trees in this option, and there was no group picnic area. We heard pretty strongly that there was a preference to not have larger groups gathering in the park. And then the Dry Creek play option here is a little bit larger, so you can see it a little bit better. The Dry Creek option was the preference. And this option was looking at using a boulder edge along the main path. There's a little bit of a grade change here, so we use this kind of boulder edge to create that grade change. And inside that, there are a few sand pits with kind of hand-operated water pumps. Along the southern side of the playground, there is this kind of beige meandering path. It's partly meandering to give this idea of the creek, but also to dodge existing trees that we're trying to keep. And that becomes the place where we fold in the picnic tables and benches and places to kind of inhabit. And we can get into this a little bit more detail when we see the developed option for it. Next slide. So for community meeting number 3, we took all the feedback that we collected and presented this refined plan that had these refinements. So it had the stormwater garden with the path and the bench. We heard a desire for more structure and a more defined edge around the Biella Elementary School. So we looked at providing a low fence and a gate that would be operated by Biella, and some seating that went along with that. And that would all operate within their property line. So you can see the red dashed line here represents the lines of the park. Again, people were looking for more shade. So we brought in some more trees into the playground that people liked from some of the other playground schemes. We brought in some street trees along Exeter and Whitechapel Way to provide more shade on the sidewalk. We heard a request for adult games like cornhole, chess, and table tennis. So we created a place in the playground in the center where all the games were kind of collected together. We heard that there was actually a desire for some of the games to be inside of the playground and some to be out. So that's something we worked on after this. There are more fitness stations. There are seating options inside the playground and outside. And then we've been really thinking about clear lines of sight through the park. There was, you may recall, there was a shooting incident that happened between community number 2 and community number 3. And so there was some concern about safety in the park. Tim reached out to police department and they gave us some things to think about, which were really around visibility and clear sight lines through the park for police cars patrolling along the edges, making sure our trees are limbed up, which works well for us because we have these mature trees that already have their canopies up high, and then making sure park signage is clearly visible and located adjacent to many locations of the park. Next slide. And at community meeting number 3, we asked a bit more specifics on the fitness equipment, the games, and the existing monument sign. The existing monument sign that is there now is a large kind of timber painted sign that was very much part of the time that it was built. And so we asked folks if they felt like they liked it, it has a certain charm to it, or if they were ready for it to be replaced, and 47% said they were interested in it being replaced. We asked a little bit more about the fitness equipment, what type of equipment. People were looking for multi-generational equipment that had a mix of strength training and cardio. And then again, we talked about the games quite a bit in terms of should some be in, should some be out, and which ones made the most sense to be in the playground versus out. Next slide. So this is the proposed master plan where it lands today. It is formatted a little bit differently from the other attachment, just in terms of space on the slide. But I can just kind of walk through it in a little bit more detail. At the corner of Exeter and Whitechapel, we have this idea for a stormwater garden, which is something will be required to treat a certain amount of the runoff of the site. It's located at the low point of the park. the natural place where water gathers. It also becomes a kind of beautiful entry garden with the monument sign placed within it. There could be educational signage telling people how this garden is cleaning and infiltrating water runoff. The path alignments come from Exeter and Whitechapel are not unsimilar from this current circulation and movement today. We know that a lot of caregivers and parents pick up children from the school along Exeter and Whitechapel, so we wanted to make sure there was pretty direct paths from the school to those edges. We moved the chess and ping pong tables outside of the park and placed them where we previously had fitness equipment. We moved another fitness equipment up to the northern side of the play, so it's now kind of consolidated to the north of the playground. We had this idea of a continuous path around the playground that would not only kind of represent this dry creek concept, but also give accessible route around the whole playground, in particular to the sand boxes. The two main entries to the playground are right where that Y is, where the two paths come together, and then on the top left, and then also an entrance coming straight in from Biella Elementary School. And so the 5 to 12 area is where that number 1 is. We will have space for a kind of medium play structure, swing set, and the big zip line. And just to the south of that, they're separated by a path. Is the 2 to 5 playground where the number 2 is located. We'll have room for a small to medium structure, swing sets, and a couple of spring riders and springboards. Each age group has a sitting area, a picnic area associated with it. The picnic area that is associated with the 5 to 12 has the cornhole set located with it. At each park entry, there's a bench, a bike rack, and the park rules sign will be located there as well. There's also a bike rack at the entry at the corner of Exeter and Whitechapel. And there is still the edge of Biella, still planning on a low kind of 42-inch tall fence that has good porosity, so you can kind of see through it. It's low, but it creates kind of a clear boundary to the school edge. And some new trees within that planted area. Try to get some shade on that existing blacktop at the school. All the perimeter trees would remain and be protected. I think we were able to save almost all of the existing trees. I think there's probably 2 we might need to remove due to some of the grading. And then the accessible ramps at the corners of Whitechapel and Exeter will all be improved to meet current accessibility standards, along with the continental crosswalk striping. And I think that is it. Oh, there's an existing perimeter fence that's right underneath those existing dark green trees. That fence will remain. And there is one bench that has a memorial plaque on it that would be relocated to a new bench in the park. That is the summary. Thank you all. I'm happy to answer any questions. Pass it back to Tim.
Thanks, Haley. That was a great presentation. I hope everybody enjoyed that. We'll have time for questions coming up, but first I want to let you know what next steps are. Pending the board's approval, we will place the Dutch floor master plan amendment on the city council agenda for December of this year or January of next year. Plural will begin construction documents following council approval. I guess we need to go to next slide. I'm sorry. Thank you. Construction of the park improvements will begin after the completion of the construction plans currently scheduled to begin May 2022. And then A park reopening celebration is anticipated in December of 22 or January of 23. Next slide, please. It is recommended by the Department of Transportation and Public Works, Parks Division, that the Board of Community Service approve the Dutch Floor Master Plan amendment to include 2 revised playground areas, public tables, pedestrian pathways, fitness equipment, and addition of such games as cornhole, table tennis, and chess, and recommend council approve of the same.
Thank you, Haley and Tim. Jen, I'm going to ask you a very broad question. I have a tendency to go directly into minutia, only to be told, no, this is a master plan. We're still painting with rather broad strokes. With our questions, can you provide some, give us a guide for how detailed a question as opposed to broad stroke questions we should be asking at this point?
Well, certainly I don't want to necessarily limit your questioning per se, but I will, I appreciate the moment to remind the board that master plans are definitely not construction drawings. We'll be working with Haley's team to refine the design and make this work for the actual site. This is the big picture. This is a graphic that's representing general locations of things and generally what type of things we want to see in the park. It's not what color is the playground, what sort of, where is that pathway going to be exactly, what type of trash can and picnic tables are you thinking of? None of those decisions have been made yet. We're just really working with the community about locations and types of amenities. And these are the things that we heard most from the community. So certainly questions around that are probably more appropriate just because we're at this big picture scale. But certainly if there's something that we can clarify, I'm sure that Haley and Tim or I can help with that as well.
Great, thank you for that. Could we get the master plan graphic back up? And is there any way to zoom in on that graphic? You can say no.
I'm going to turn to our host. I'm not sure if that is possible. I'm going to turn to our host to see if they have an answer.
And as we get that possibly taken care of, raise your hand if you have questions. Then we will go to public comments and then we'll come back for board discussion. So we will go to Terry.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to really give kudos to Haley and the staff for these series of community meetings. I had the opportunity to attend all 3, and I really, really liked the way they were structured. I thought it was really helpful for the community in making decisions to start with that sort of 30,000 foot view, conceptual view, and then kind of hone in with the successive meetings. So kudos to you for that. I thought it worked really, really well. Just 2 quick questions. You mentioned benches on the school side of the fence. What is the purpose of those benches? Were those requested by the school or were they requested by the neighborhood?
Thanks. They were not requested by anybody. I think it was a suggestion on our part, just noticing that there's no place to sit along that edge to provide an amenity for the school.
And then my other question is sort of a minutia question. So sorry, Jen. I'm not sure if this is something that gets mentioned in a master plan or not, but when parks, if you were to add a dog waste dispenser, a bag dispenser, would that be an amenity that would need to be included in a park master plan? And is there any reason why you wouldn't want to include that as part of a park master plan?
I can help a little bit with that from the perspective of the city, and then I'll turn it to Haley from the design perspective. For the city, usually we don't label things that are that small very often, but we can, especially we label things if it was specifically requested so that community members can see it often. But it's not necessary. We can include it later on if we want. We typically do not put dog waste bags at parks without a dog park, just from a cost savings perspective, because we do have a tendency for people to come and take them all. So it's it's a lot, but we can put them in, and we can make that happen if we have a significant problem there. But I don't know, Haley, if you have a design perspective you want to add.
I think you covered it, Jen. We can, I think that some of the smaller things that we have labeled, like the park signs, are things that came up through the conversation. So some of those smaller things are labeled on this plan. But yeah, I think it's an operation question in terms of the dog park bags.
Okay, great. That answers it. Thank you.
Anyone else from the board have questions for Jen or Haley? So Haley, I have a couple of questions. I actually know the answer to a couple of them, but I want you to review it anyway. In walking the park from one side, Exeter, from Exeter over to the tree line on the Biela side, 3-minute walk, 5-minute walk?
It's a pretty quick walk, 2 minutes max. Yeah.
Perfect. Top to bottom, maybe 5 minutes.
If that, yeah.
Okay. And sidewalks under the trees on Exeter. So there is a continuous
That's
sidewalk.
right.
Great.
That's right.
I noticed there's only one drinking fountain over by the Exeter cornhole area. If you were down at the water not the water feature, the drainage feature, you're still within like 5 minutes most to go get a drink of water. And that would be one of those newfangled, this is minutia too, but one of those newfangled multi-purpose water bottle filling stations, right? Perfect.
Yeah, I believe so.
Last but not least, I'm a little concerned about the number of features over by the end of the zip line, cornhole, garbage cans, bike rack, bench. And I've got a second monitor, so I've got it blown up. I can see. Can you give me some dimensions for how much distance there is between the zip line, say, and cornhole, or the bench and the bike rack? Or is this all stuff to be worked out? There's plenty of room once things starts going down.
Yeah, we do have this drawn and dimensioned, like in CAD. So we do believe that it all fits. The distance between the cornhole and the that side of the zip line is maybe 10 feet. So those picnic tables that you see there, those are like 6 foot long picnic tables, if that helps you with scale.
And how about the bench and the bike rack? Are they pretty much adjoining?
There's space for a bike wheel to overhang at the bench. And then on the western side of the bench, there is 36 inches there for a companion seating opportunity. So there's about 36 inches minimum between the bench and the bike rack for that wheel overhang.
And all of that could be worked out?
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Yes, we'll definitely be looking at that closer as we start to draw it more. Definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else have any other questions? Okay, then we are going to open this up for public comments. Do we have anyone waiting to do a public comment?
No, it does not look like we have any public comment.
Okay, then we get to move forward with discussion. And we have a bit of breathing room. I know it's late, but this is an important park for an important neighborhood. So I would love for everybody to weigh in. Any takers? Madonna.
Sure. Yeah,
Sure.
I just want to say thank you for the presentation. And you mentioned towards the end there that, you know, the ramps will be accessible for the wheelchair population. So
Madonna?
I
I
yes.
apologize for interrupting. We actually have 2 attendees who have raised their hand for public comment.
Okay.
Can I interrupt you and allow them the chance to speak?
You definitely.
Okay, thank you.
So I need to do this little formal statement that says to the caller that your speaking permission is going to be enabled. And oh God, that's not me, that's you. Excuse me.
That's okay, no problem. So I do have a speaker. It looks like Kyle Klink. I'm going to allow you to speak. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, thank you. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
You briefly just say thank you to Haley as well. I was in every single community meeting, my husband and I, and we live here in the community right next to Dutch Floor Park for over a year now. And it was just wonderful to have Haley and everyone else who participated and put on the presentations and the public forum and all of that. And I just want to applaud her and her help. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a second speaker whose screen name is V. You may now speak.
Hi, my name is Valerie. I'm also a neighbor. I just want to repeat exactly what the last person said, but also talk about the shootings.
I'm sorry, V, can you please repeat what you were saying?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Your speaker cut off. We restarted your 3 minutes. Go ahead, I apologize.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to echo the same thing that the last person said, that this has been a great community building thing. It feels like neighbors have really been heard. There was that shooting that happened between the 2 meetings that was addressed just a few minutes ago, but there was also another shooting just this week in the same general area that really concerns us neighbors. And just keeping safety in mind at all times. If there's anything that can be done, I don't know what the solution is, but it makes us very concerned letting our kids run around the park when there's drive-bys happening more and more regularly.
Thank you for your comments. We have no further public comments.
Thank you. So Madonna, back to you.
I think I covered it, just being accessible to persons who are in a wheelchair or maybe, you know, hard of walking. I really appreciate you touching on that, since the disabled community is my community as well. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Carolina?
I want to unmute first. I want to thank Haley. Your team is like magic. This is one of the reasons why I love this board, is I loved being able to be on the beginning and how the park started. The children get to participate. It's a fabulous feeling. I loved the whole thing. And I'm not like Carol. I don't drill down into the details because she does it. So she does it for me. But thank you again. This looks like it's going to be a terrific park. Al Biella was an old friend of mine, and he's going to love it.
Logan.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks to the staff and the consultants for the good report, and a special thanks to the members of the community for showing up to the meetings and calling in. That's really important that we hear from you for something you're going to use basically every day, or at least every week, according to the data. I do have one minutia question for Tim. Tim, are those water bottle filling stations standard part of any new park, or how did that get decided as opposed to a older fashioned drinking fountain?
I think the decision was made because there's exercise equipment there. And it made sense to have that sort of filling station.
Great. I take my water bottle everywhere. Some people refer to it as my baba. So I love that. And I wish those were in every park. So thank you for adding that.
Terry?
I'm just very supportive of the plan and excited for the neighborhood. It's a beautiful park now. It's going to be even more spectacular once it's done. So I'm really, really excited about this master plan. So thank you all for your hard work.
I echo that. I think the neighborhood is going to really enjoy and use this park, and that it will be a community asset and a heart for this community. And that is very exciting. I'm going to jump to the conclusion that there's a very good possibility we will move this forward today. If we move this forward today, will this come back to us at all, or will this be the last time we see Dutch Floor's improvement package?
Trying to unmute there. Sorry about that. So this will be really the last time the master plan will come back, but I will bring you director updates at all times when we have some action on the project, such as construction, bidding, and things like that, so that you are kept up to date, and we will keep our website up to date. But otherwise, it's not necessarily returning, but we can certainly return at any time for an update. But after here, we'll go to council. And then if council approves, then we'll start the construction document process, and, kind of rolls from there into construction.
So will the community be engaged at all as far as the look of the equipment that goes in?
Certainly, if they would like to be, we encourage folks to reach out. You can contact myself or Tim, or just reach out to Rec and Parks and they'll put you in the right direction. Oftentimes the community is not necessarily involved in the nitty gritty decisions, but we certainly welcome that at any time. If anybody would like to be involved in that decision-making process, it's certainly easy to do. What we usually do is go through a process based on what Haley's already done and present that online before we go out to construction, so folks know exactly what play equipment they're getting. Which is what we've done with the Fir Ridge Park. So we had the neighbors there gave us some feedback because we had an HOA. It was pretty easy to reach out and gave us a little bit of feedback. And so we posted the design that they selected online. And so if this community is interested, we can do that. Or if the board would like us to, we can reach back out to the community and see if there is any interest on a certain type. Sometimes we get stuck and we'll reach back out to the community and say, is there a preference? So it can happen either way. We haven't heard anybody from this community in particular very interested in it, but we're happy to work with community members. We love it because it really makes our lives a lot easier to have some feedback.
So my thought, if Haley's willing to come up again, would be to re-engage the school, re-engage the kids at Biella. It's both an educational and a creative endeavor for them, and also a community builder. That would be my hope.
We can do that.
Great. So would anyone like to make a motion to recommend City Council that we approve as a board the Dutch Floor Neighborhood Master Plan and send it forward to City Council?
I'll make that motion. I move that the board approve the Dutch Floor Master Plan Amendment to include 2 revised playground areas, picnic tables, pedestrian pathways, fitness equipment, and addition of games such as cornhole, table tennis, and chess, and recommend council approval of same.
Would anyone
I'll
care to
second.
second?
I'll second.
I'll second. You can have it, Carolina. You said you knew Al.
I did. Thank you.
There you go.
Thanks, Logan.
Can we get a roll call vote now?
They didn't hear me. Please respond when I call your name. Chair Quant,
Yes?
Vice Chair Griffin,
Yes.
Board Member Spillman. Oh, sorry, he's left. Board Member Pitt,
Yes.
Board Member Cruz,
Yes.
Board Member Spence.
Yes.
Let the record reflect the motion passed with 5 ayes.
Awesome. Well done, guys. Committee reports. The mayor's lunch, a lot of discussion about the affordable housing that's being done in the downtown corridor. It's actually starting to go up and it's very exciting. Waterways Committee did not meet last month and it is not meeting again tomorrow. Jen, do we have any written or electronic communications?
None at this time.
Great. I am going to share that Alyssa was kind enough to send me images that are the city park map with city council district lines drawn over it, which I would be very happy to ask her to share with the entire board and possibly to share with your city council person. I'm not saying that we act just for our district, but there are a lot of parks that are right there on the borders that I haven't a clue whose district they're in. These maps actually show it. Would you guys like those? They're in JPEG form. Awesome. Alyssa, can you do that for us?
Yes, will do.
Perfect. Thank you. Future agenda items. We are meeting in December. I don't know if there's anything slated for December, and then we'll be done for the year and picking it up again. Can I say in real life, maybe? In real life, maybe in the new year.
I like the word maybe. Just a little add on to that. We are trying to get the room set up so that we can do a hybrid meeting. And so that's our target and we'll keep you posted. And we do have the deferred maintenance measure deferred maintenance condition assessment for parks coming to you in December, as well as the neighborhood services program.
So what say we have a short meeting in December and leave it at that? Oh, everybody, I know, I want to spend more time in Zoom. Madonna, did you have your hand up? Okay, any agenda items to add for next month? Then I'm going to say at 7:39 with 6 minutes to spare, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much. We did good things tonight.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.